Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to episode 113 of James Bond Radio. My name is Tom Sears, and I'm joined by my good buddy, Mr. Christopher Pussfella. Right, how you doing, buddy?
Not bad. I like that intro, man. Mr. Christopher Pussfella. I'm going to use that. That is now going to be my name forever forth.
I don't know why I feel Pussfella is appropriate to you. I don't know why. I'm not sure if you've ever wrestled alligators before, but I feel like you're a Pussfella. It just feels right to me, you know?
That's good. I've wrestled about 3 of them so far, so, you know.
Good stuff.
A couple more to go, and I'll be,
I'll
be like Steve Irwin.
Indeed. So today, Chris, I'm not sure if you're aware about this, but we're going deep on A View to a Kill once again. So for the last 2 episodes, I know you were here, but I thought I'd just fill you in on what we've been doing for the last 2 episodes. We've obviously been reviewing A View to a Kill. Know. Yeah, we've been review to a killing. That joke still isn't landing right. I have to do some more work on it. Anyway, so we've done that. We've pushed that to one side. We've talked about A View to a Kill. Now, A View to a Kill is a bit of a special one in the sense that it divides a lot of opinion. It gets a lot of flack. People say Roger's too old, or Stacey's too young, or whatever it is, or they shouldn't have had the Beach Boys and all that kind of business. So today we thought we'd go deep on it, right? Because it's easy to slag something off. It's easy. So we thought what we'd do is we'd invite 2 absolute champions of A View to a Kill on the show to sing its praises and see and hear that side of things that you don't often hear, the person who's flying that flag. So we've got good old Mark O'Connell, and we've got good old Andrew McNess. So Mark O'Connell, obviously the author of Catching Bullets, Memoirs of a Bond Fan, and Andrew McNess, author of A Close Look at A View to a Kill. So what do you think about that, Chris? Talk to me. Tell me.
Oh, well, I'm happy about this because we didn't actually hint this or advertise this to the fans. So this is kind of like a new, a bonus episode almost. We've done a review. Obviously, next time we're going to be doing the 90-second listener review, which will be great. But we thought we'd sneak this one in there. Get the opinions of some diehard A View to a Kill fans, just to kind of counterbalance the argument a little bit. So, yeah, really looking forward to seeing what they have to say.
Absolutely.
It should be a good episode.
Good stuff. I'll tell you what else I'm happy with, Chris. Are you ready?
Yeah, go on.
I'm happy with last week's Music of Bond episode number 3 that you and Warren put together. Derek Watkins, the James Bond trumpeter. Tell me about it. How was that for you?
Right. It was great, actually, because obviously this guy is a legend. Dr. No through to Skyfall. That's all you need to say, sort of thing. So he's worked on more Bond films than anyone else. Lead trumpeter. Any sort of Bond soundtracks where you get a good trumpet. He did a flugelhorn in Fiore's Only.
Very nice.
You know, the classic sort of cheesy one. So he's at the forefront of all that sort of stuff. And I learned quite a lot, actually. Obviously, I was aware of him and sort of the amount of work he'd done. But there were still nice little nuggets. And we got to hear from Wendy Watkins, his widow. So that was really moving, actually.
Yeah.
She obviously it was heartfelt, and the cause is what is great for. There's the charity that's been set up, which we were going to put a link in on the Facebook. Exactly. So we put the link up on our Facebook page. So please, pledge if you can. But that was really great, and just speaking to Warren about it. Obviously, Warren's got a huge passion for the music and that side of things. So yeah, it was a great episode, and it was really well received as well. So
yeah, absolutely,
great stuff.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it's like something like that. We all knew the name Derek Watkins, and he'd always played right back there on Dr. No and went all the way through to Skyfall and all that kind of stuff. But it's funny, isn't it? Because you take something like the trumpet. For some people like us who don't play that, it's hard to sort of understand how good he was, because it's easy for somebody like you and I to look at somebody like, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix playing the guitar, and then somebody like Bob Dylan playing the guitar, and you can see how amazing Hendrix is, whereas Bob Dylan is just like a normal guitar player kind of thing, and it's easy to see the difference. But something like the trumpet, to lay people like us, it's like, well, it's just a trumpet, you just blow on it, don't you, and it makes a sound. But then after hearing sort of Warren talk about it and stuff, and I've looked at some footage of Derek playing and stuff, and all that, there's something about that dude, man. And it's like, I don't know whether I'm just imagining it because I listen to the podcast or not, but there's like, Warren was talking about him being able to hit those really high notes and stuff. And it's like, I feel like I can hear Derek on the scores now, and I feel like I know which bit's him. I might be just completely barking up the wrong tree, but that's how I feel. And I'm going with it, Chris.
Definitely. Well, if it's a standout sax moment, it's got to be him. I think it's got to be him.
Well, I'm probably not, because he played the trumpet, not the sax. But I know what you're saying.
Standout trumpet moment is what I meant. You know what I meant.
Yes.
Got sax on the brain.
Yeah, indeed. Don't worry.
Standout trumpet moment.
Yeah.
Or horn, or flugelhorn. as we mentioned. So great episode that. Also, we've got to mention about the other weekend. Now, this was
I don't want to talk about this because I'm so jealous. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to move swiftly on because I wasn't there.
Okay.
All right.
Let's just log it off.
All right. Cool.
Okay. So on to the interviews.
Go on. Operation London's calling. Tell me about it.
Yes.
And try and ignore my tears.
So, well, it was, first of all, it was absolutely awesome weekend. We, I think we had, over combined days, we must have had about 30 to 35 people.
Goodness me.
We had about 20 on each day, but some people could only make the Saturday, some people only the Sunday. We didn't manage to get to every location on the itinerary, but we pretty much covered most of it. Highlights definitely include taking over the National Gallery, which is awesome. And we got there straight away. So basically, it's a bit frowned upon to like take photos and stuff like that.
I remember being told off for trying to take a photo of the Skyfall painting. Yeah,
we basically got there when it opened, and it was just JBR in the sort of room 34, I think it is, with the Skyfall pictures. So we had a few little snaps, and then we got some group pictures, and luckily we managed to score some of that, so that was good. And we did a few other bits and pieces. Other highlights, we went down. Oh mate, the Thames trip was immense. So this is on the Ribcraft, and it was really good, right? So we had 2 boats. I think there was 20 of us in total on the 2 boats. So they took us on a little tour. So we started at Embankment Pier. We were going to go straight left down to the O2 and back, but in terms of time, they kind of rearranged it. So instead of going straight that way, we hang a right and we head down to MI6. So we got to obviously see that, which was good. We came back up past Embankment. We went past the City Hall and all stuff like that. And as soon as we got to Tower Bridge, that's when the speed restriction is lifted and you can just open it up.
Nice. And
suddenly the boat just like powered on, and we had the Bond music playing. We had like different themes from obviously through the series, and and they're really good, really tight turning circles on these things. And it got to the point where it was quite a wide area of the Thames, obviously heading sort of quite far out, and they could really sort of crank the turns in. And I was looking around, everyone was smiling, everyone was like head buffing to the music and just breathing it in, you know.
Well,
really breathing it in.
Thankfully, you periscoped quite a lot of that boat trip, didn't you? So I was watching over here in Bangkok, quietly weeping to myself, and I could hear the Bond music playing, and I could see little Steve Thorpe on the boat. He was enjoying himself, and I could see the back of Rory's head, and there was a bunch of everybody on there. So it was cool to watch, man. It looked like a wicked little ride. Yeah.
It was awesome, and we had obviously the pilot, and we had the compare who was sort of giving us a bit of Bond spiel as well, which was really good. So that was kind of nice.
Now, how was he with the delivery of the spiel? Were the facts correct? Was there any calculations or corrections that needed to be changed, or what?
I would say it was probably 75 to 80% correct.
Right.
So there were items that were mentioned, and I did discuss this with some of the guys, and I was like, you can either go to him after and say, look, mate, cheers for what you did. but there's just 1 or 2 things. And then I thought to myself, well, you don't want to come across as a cock. Yeah. And I reckon 95% of other people that he'll be doing the tour to won't know the difference.
Yeah.
And you know, you're more there for the experience of the boat. And he did have a lot of other stuff unrelated to Bond, which was interesting as well. So
it's that thing, isn't it? You can do that. You can pull your Bond top trumps cards and be like, listen, you got some facts incorrect. But by doing that, you automatically get the Bellin card dealt to you, don't you, at the same time? So definitely. you just let it go, man. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I was aware of that Bellin card. I really didn't want it.
You've obviously had it in the past once or twice.
Oh, yeah. Loads of times. No, so I actually ended up getting a photo, which I'm going to show you.
Very nice.
In fact, it was a bit strange. So we went to one point where the boat powers past this sort of apartment block on the riverbank, but we're quite far away. And the guy was like, okay, so wave to that guy standing there. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know what it was for the photo. So I was just like waving, not knowing where I was looking sort of thing. And I think, half of the boat kind of knew what was going on and half the boat didn't. I obviously wasn't listening early on. But anyway, so he was obviously taking a photo for the thing, and by the time we got back, it was there. So I don't know if you'll be able to see everyone.
Mate, that's a wicked shot.
So there we all are on the boat. I think I am sort of one of the front ones around there. And
I can just about make out Warren. Warren was sitting next to you. I remember seeing him on Periscope as well.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So there's a good bunch of us there. Now that
I can see B-Dobs. I can see Brian Dobson over the back there. That's nice. Good stuff.
There he is. Yeah, there he is. So there's all the gang there. I was next to Paul, actually. Paul Jameson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So where am I? There's me. There's Paul. There's Sid. There's AJ.
Paul looks strikingly like Warren Ringham if I look from in this photo, but there you go. Handsome dude.
And that boat there is called the Exterminator boat, and that was the one that they used for filming Spectre.
Really?
So yeah, when Spectre was being filmed on the boat, that was the main camera boat that they used to film the Thames scene. So that was really cool.
That's wicked.
Yeah, and honestly, mate, I highly recommend anyone. I'd happily do it again, definitely. Anyone that hasn't given it a go, the Rib Craft. It's called the Thames Rib Experience is a company, and we've got to give them a shout out, man, because it was uber good. John Ward's going to do a nice little write up for the blog. We've got loads of cool pictures, so we'll stick that up once we're done. Wicked. But yeah, so definitely recommend that. Other highlights then, we've got to say Darren Noble, what a legend. Okay, so he helped me with the itinerary and when all that, but he went the extra mile, Tom. He had a Universal Exports plaque made. Now, it looked identical to the Majesty's one. Identical.
Mate, I saw the photo that you put up there, and for a minute I had a moment of madness and thought to myself, oh, they found the actual door with the Universal Exports plaque on it. And then I was like, hold on a minute, Tommy, that was not actually real. You need to get to grips with the reality a little bit, of course. But it did look exactly like Majesty's, didn't it? That opening shot of the Universal Exports plaque, absolutely identical. Dazzy Knobs delivers again.
Yeah, well, we spent a good 5-10 minutes trying to get the right spot, trying to line it up so you could just see the clock face and the people walking past. And it wasn't exact, but it was the closest we could get within the confines of what we had to use. And we got a couple of the JBR, Tom Stanier, to walk past and pretend to be Peter Hunt and a few other sort of things. So that was really awesome. That was great. Got to mention Lazenby Lamppost. I think we've now literally just this second entered the Guinness Book of World Records for the most James Bond fans doing a Lazenby Lamppost photo.
It must be
so
there,
that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's got to be there. Look that out for the next edition. But that was brilliant. We had again 20 odd fans crowding around the lamppost, getting the shots in. So that was brilliant. A few of us went to Rules as well. Managed to get 13 of us into Rules, which was fantastic. So we had some lovely food. We didn't end up in Duke's, which is a shame, but we can do that again another time. And then Sunday, we hit up loads of really cool locations. We went to Trinity Square, which I'd never been to, which was great. Did College of Arms. Obviously, we've been there before, and that's just looks so, it's just brilliant, isn't it? And we went to quite a few of the canals from The World Isn't Enough. Now, I know you and I went to one a while ago, so we visited that one again. And it was beautiful because the sun was out. We couldn't have picked a perfect day, like in terms of the weather. Yeah. The sun was out and it was glistening off the canal. And all I wanted was just like if we had a mini Q-boat, sort of speedboat thing that we could have had, that would have been so good. But that was great. And we went to the one, the bridge where he ducks under to do his tie and all that sort of stuff. And then we finished off with MI6 and a few of us stayed into the end to do Buckingham Palace as well.
Amazing.
So happy days all
So
round.
you did. I was following along as much as I could because you did quite a lot of periscoping, didn't you? So that's a thing. Anybody who doesn't follow us on Periscope yet, download it on your phone. It's on Android and iPhone. Download Periscope, follow us, it's at James Bond Radio, and then you've got all the backlog of all the previous live stream Periscopes we've done. So that goes back to when we were at Bond Stars. You can see us doing the tour of the garden on there and all those locations. And then, of course, you Periscope pretty much everywhere you went on the London schooling trip. Yeah.
I tried to go, the thing with the Thames one was I was Periscoping it, and just as the boat was about to go really fast, the guy kind of came to the front of the boat, and you're not really meant to be filming. Oh. So I basically put my phone between my legs, so the viewers probably had a lovely shot for about a minute or two.
All the more reason to tune in. A little extra visual treat there for everybody. Lovely.
There we go.
Good stuff.
Lovely. So yeah, I tried to Periscope as much as I could. In fact, got the last couple that I missed on Sunday, but got some good ones in. I just got to give a shout out first of all as well. We met Dan Gale, the amazing Dan Gale, the legend that is Dan Gale.
He returned from his sojourn in the field. Then I take it
he did, and he looked all right. So he must have taken care of whatever. He must have eliminated whatever problem was in the field.
Indeed,
so that was good.
Lovely stuff.
Yeah. So it's good to meet him for the first time. But I'm going to do a big shout out because there was loads of lovely people that attended. So big shout out to Darren Noble, obviously for helping us out and organising. Rory Cooper, Wazza, Dan Gale, Brian Dobson, AJ, James Blundell, John Ward, Sid Mann, Simon Gardner, Steve Thorpe, Matthew Grice, Kimberly Dewhurst, Simon Escuri, Richard Fish, Tom Stania, Sam Allen, Jason Card, Paul Jameson, Simon Billington, Julian O'Hare, Teddy O'Hare, Chris Ettle, Becca Andrews, Catherine Smith, Richard Neves, and Dom Frost.
There you go.
So that's it. I mean, that's a heck of a bunch, isn't it? I remember, like we were saying the other day, the first sort of JBR meetup, we had about a handful of people.
I remember, that's quite the rogues gallery, isn't it? Like I remember, I think the very first JBR get together we ever did was my birthday Goldfinger screening at the Prince Charles Cinema, and I think 4 people showed up. Dazzy Knobs, Golden Voice, of course, and
nice.
Old Steve Batchelor and his mate. I think that was it. Yeah, hopefully I'm not forgetting anybody there because I'll sound like a right wanker. But there you go. Sorry if I did. Anyway, cool stuff. Yeah, wicked, man. So lots of JBR meetups to come in the future.
Yes, without a doubt. In fact, there's a couple that we can chat about in a minute. So through, obviously we mentioned it, more details for the Chateau Hand thing will be released in the new year. We're still sort of fine-tuning the details for that, but that will be amazing. In terms of other meetups, James Bond Radio South Coast Central will be having their first ever meetup. Now this, I've seen the itinerary and it looks like a stonking weekend. So it's Operation Main Strike. Yes, lovely. It's on the weekend of the 1st, 2nd of April, so it's not an April Fool's joke. This is actually happening. So we're meeting 10 a.m. at the Leon Solet Hovercraft Museum. Now, this is where they have the hovercraft from Diamonds Are Forever. Great. I think it's the Princess Margaret hovercraft. And there's also 3 hovercrafts that were used in the pre-titles of your favourite Bond, Die Another Day.
Fantastic.
So that'd be quite cool as well.
Yeah, cool.
Yes, lovely. Then we're going to head to Amberley Museum where with the actual Main Strike mine. I had the pleasure of visiting that last year or the year before. And I mean, you can tell from if anyone hasn't seen the video yet, when I go there, I get rather excited.
You do.
I get very excited.
I remember your Stacey Sutton performance and your Mayday performance was outstanding. I remember laughing my balls off when I watched that video because you'd sent it to me before you uploaded it, obviously. And there's you outside the little tunnel entrance going, "Get Sorin for me!" But quietly but loud at the same time, so you didn't obviously show yourself up. And then your Stacey Sutton screams were a fantastic, excellent performance.
Well, there you go. There you go. But I'm sure we'll be getting groups of us doing that, hopefully, or maybe when we visit there. And then the Sunday, so the 2nd of April, Bewley are doing an Aston Martin Day, which I can't wait. So we're going to have, Aston. There'll be obviously DB5s, DBSs, Vantage, all these sort of things. I don't think there'll be a DB10, but it'll be nice. Maybe John Morgan from Pinewood will be there with his DB5. I don't know. Well, if he is, I'll give him a shout. But yeah, so that'll be awesome. Just seeing loads of cool Astons and then that'll be the day. So I think we're planning on staying overnight in Chichester on the Saturday.
Very nice.
But yeah, lots to look forward to.
So this is the first official JBR regional group meetup, isn't it? This isn't an official Chris Wright led meetup. It's a JBR South Coast Central meetup, which is even more special, I'd say.
UK, but I wouldn't say it's the first one because JBR Chicago had their Las Vegas trip, didn't they?
Of course, I think that was JBR Philadelphia, but yes.
Oh, Philadelphia,
yes,
sorry. JBR Philly. That's right.
That's
the Philly
true.
crew. Yeah,
they did, didn't they? So this is the second one. Yeah, absolutely. So April 1st and 2nd of next year.
That's right. And speaking of JBR groups as well, JBR Birmingham has been set up recently by Daniel Hadley.
Very nice.
And it's not just Birmingham, so it's basically the Midlands and also people in the north as well. So anyone within, basically anyone north of London.
Anyone with a funny accent, they're allowed in. Is that what it is?
That's pretty much what it is. You need your accent and then you get acceptance. And that's going great guns. That's already got a load of members as well. So
lovely stuff. JBR Birmingham. Yeah. Of course, there are all of our regional JBR kind of subgroups on the website. If you go over to jamesbondradio.com, on the right hand side, you can see a little picture that says join your local JBR listener group. And there's the list of them there. And of course, if you want to start one for your area, just literally make a Facebook group with the name of JBR and then wherever it is you live, the city or town or whatever it is, and let us know, and we'll push it on Facebook and add it to the website. So yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Excellent. So we've had, in other news, we've had a bit of Daniel Craig news. Now, this is reviews of the play Othello, which is produced by Barbara Broccoli, which is really cool. Now, everywhere that I've looked, the reviews have been amazing. So Daniel Craig is playing alongside David Oyelowo.
Oh, look at that! Look at that pronunciation. That was some top drawer stuff there. I'm not going to try that one either. I'm just going to laugh at your attempt.
Thanks, man. So yeah, I mean, it's been having loads of praise. JBR listener Tony Latino, excellent man that he is. He's a great guy. He went to see the play and had pretty much front seats, I think, so he got to see Daniel up close. Now, Tony Latino, he described the show as intense, explosive, riveting. I cannot put into words sufficiently to describe this incredible presentation I witnessed. The 2 stars were at the peak of their game. For me, getting Daniel to sign my programme from the passenger window of his black Range Rover just as he's driving away is beyond words. Thanks to my close friend Giacomo for the hottest ticket in town. That's what a night that would be.
What a night indeed. And that's kind of like in Skyfall when he's on his way to the new digs a little bit in the back of it. I think it's a Range Rover, isn't it?
Yeah,
and,
that's it.
That is kind of like he's off onto a little briefing or something. I like it. It's nice.
I like it. It's cool. Time Out New York also said Craig is terrifying. Dead shark's eyes blazing from under a crew cut, biting into Igo's lines as if they were tearing raw steaks. Now that's pretty good.
Very nice. Well, as you know, I'm a big Shakespeare fan myself, Chris, so I would love to go and watch that. Absolutely.
Do you know what I would love to go and watch, though? You know what I would love to go and watch is Daniel Craig maybe doing Othello, maybe doing, he did that thing with Hugh Jackman a few years back. I'd just like to see him come and do a play in London. Yeah. Basically, I'd like to see him in a play, and obviously London or the UK would be a lot easier to get to. So I don't know if that will ever happen because he's kind of like Broadway inclined at the moment. Yeah. But if he ever does get over to do a play here, I reckon we've got to get tickets.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start a petition. Bring Daniel back to the UK where he belongs to do some theatre for us lot. Anyway, good stuff. Excellent. That's the news roundup sorted before we start cracking on to the 2 guests that we've got today. Before we do so, make sure you come and join us on Facebook. Just put James Bond Radio into the Facebook search box and you will find us. Make sure you click like so you can join in on all the discussions and stuff that's going on over there. That's always good. Come and follow us on Twitter, which is just at James Bond Radio. Stick that in the search box and you will also find us. Along with that is Periscope for our live streaming chats. I haven't done one of those in a while, actually. I need to get back on that. Periscope live chats. So, do you know what I've noticed? For anybody who's not watching, whenever I do this bit, I only realised this recently. Chris does actions while I'm doing this. So he's making like Periscope symbols with his arms. And it wasn't until very recently when I was editing, I realised that you were doing that. So that's great, man. I love it. Anyway, Periscope, if you don't know what it is, it's live streaming stuff, video. So basically, sometimes I'll jump on there and be like, let's chat Bond for half an hour and we can have a little chat and all that kind of stuff. We Periscope live streamed loads of stuff from Pinewood at the Bond Stars event, and then obviously the recent JBR meetup in London. Chris Periscoped a load of that, and you get the whole history, the whole backlog. So if you're ever missing us and you're like, I need some more JBR in my life, you can jump on Periscope and watch through the backlog, and there's Maddie Smith on there and all sorts of Bond people chatting from the Bond Stars event and all that kind of stuff. So you're missing out. So make sure you follow us on Periscope. That's just at James Bond Radio. You can come over to jamesbondradio.com and check out the blog over there. Good old Jack Lugo is keeping that flag flying for us with all sorts of content and discussion in the comments area and all that kind of stuff. You can also find the local JBR listener groups and videos and God knows what else over there as well. You can come and subscribe on iTunes, which is always good. Just put James Bond Radio into the iTunes store search. Make sure you subscribe and auto download so you get a fresh steaming pile of JBR in your podcatcher every Friday morning. Lovely stuff. Yes, absolutely. And also on jamesbondradio.com, there's always the donate link as well up in the nav bar. If you feel like you want to help keep the JBR ship afloat, that's always appreciated. Other ways you can help JBR, you can post about JBR on social media. You can share our posts. You can get involved on the various Bond forums and talk about JBR and all that kind of stuff. Just spread the word with a bit of good old-fashioned word of mouth. That's always appreciated, and that helps us grow just as much as everything else does. So that's always appreciated. Get that flag waving. That's what we say, don't we, Chris?
We do indeed. Wow, that was quite a mouthful.
It's getting longer, isn't it? Now we've got Periscope and all this kind of various things. It's like it used to be just follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and now it's whole. I could do a whole podcast just with that spiel. But go on.
Yeah, speaking of JBR flags, I just got to mention when we did the London's Calling. One thing that I noticed from previous JBR meetups where we might have had maybe even 10, 12 people, once you hit the sort of 20 plus mark. Groups tend to be a lot more difficult to keep together.
I can imagine.
In terms of people, looking at stuff, various places. So I think getting some JBR flags, like when you see the tourists come into Buckingham Palace and there's one person with a big flag and they all following them. We might have to sort of invest in a couple of JBR flags or high-vis vests or something.
I imagine that rowdy bunch, you had to do a fair bit of wrangling to keep them all in the same spot. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, JBR flags indeed. Cool stuff. So we've got a bit of JBR listener bond trivia to whet our appetites with before we crack on and talk to our first guest. So what have we got this week, Chris?
So just before we actually play the trivia, I just want to say we're coming. We've got a bit of space in our JBR listener sort of folder. So basically, what we're looking for is listener trivia questions. But please, if you do a trivia question, please follow it up immediately afterwards with the answer, so we have both. Because there's no point asking us a question and we might answer it and not know if we're right or not. So if you're gonna, please throw us a listener trivia. Go to jamesbondradio.com. Send voicemail. There's a little button on the right. Equally as well, trivia, listener quotes. We're looking for more listener quotes. So as before, if you send in the first message, do your quote, and then send in the second messages with the answer to the quote as well. That'd be fantastic. So we'd like to get a bit of a stockpile of those going again.
You know what? I'm gonna throw out a challenge to one of our listeners, Chris. One of our long-term listeners, Mr. Simon Hunter, he's been following us on Twitter and listening to the show for a long time. And I've been a couple of times over the last year, I said, "Oi, Simon, when are we going to get a quote or when are we going to get a trivia question or whatever?" And he keeps fobbing it off. So I'm going to throw down the gauntlet. I'm going to get my glove. I'm going to give him a little gentle slap on the cheeks with it, chuck it on the floor. Mr. Simon Hunter at U-Turn Driving on Twitter. You know who you are. Give us a question. Give us a quote. Get involved. Nice. It's time he delivered, mate.
Definitely. And following on from that extends to anyone that hasn't yet given us a Twitter or a quote. It's great to get the usuals in because it's brilliant. But if you have been listening to JBR for quite a while and you haven't sent us either a listener trivia or a listener quote, get on it because we'd like to hear from you. And you get to hear your name on the show. So
absolutely. Indeed. Old Thomas Heasley's keen, isn't he? He's sent a lot of questions and quotes through. Good on him. I like it. It's good stuff.
He has. So we've got, funnily enough, the trivia question of today is from Mr. Thomas Heasley. Shall we have a listen?
Let's have a listen to it.
Okay, here we go.
Hi guys, it's Tom Heasley here in Belfast. And I have a quiz question for you. In which movie does Roger Moore mention James Bond, but it's not a James Bond movie?
All right, Chris, then what do you think about that?
Now, initially I was a bit like, oh, okay, what could that be? But I've actually been lucky because I might have seen this film earlier in the year. And when I watched it, obviously I remembered it for hearing that line. So I did, so I've got a pretty safe bet that I know what it is. But if I hadn't have watched that film this year, I would not have known what it is because it was the first time I'd ever watched it.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah. So
see, I had a little twinkling, but now you've said that, that's taken me off the scent a little bit. So, all right. Good stuff. Yeah. Okay, then. Should we crack on with our first guest of the day, Chris?
Let's do it. And who's going to be our first guest,
Our
Tom?
first guest of the day is going to be good old Mark O'Connell, author of Catching Bullets, Memoirs of a Bomb Fan. Obviously, long-term listeners will remember Mark from back in episode 17 when he came on for his first interview. But obviously, as he told us back then, A View to a Kill is his favourite Bond film. So we thought it would be good to get him on again. And, well, it wasn't even our idea, was it really, Chris? He's just sort of bashed our ears in until we succumbed and said, all right, come on then. He was just like spamming our inboxes. Can I come and talk A View to a Kill? Can I? I was like, all right, come on then.
Fair enough.
But there we go. So without any further ado then, let's talk to Mr. Mark O'Connell.
Who are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond.
James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy. I think this
Today, we'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Mark O'Connell, author of Catching Bullets, Memoirs of a Bond Fan. Second time we've been on the show. Welcome back, Mark.
Hello. How you doing?
Very
all
well.
Good.
How are
all
you
good.
doing? Does it feel good to be back on James Bond Radio? Because you came on
Absolutely.
a long time ago now.
You were just a small local hospital radio when I was last on, but now look at you.
There you go.
The Radio 5 of Bond.
There you go. I'm just looking back on iTunes, actually. You were episode 17, and now what are we at? 113 today, so that's pretty good. Yeah, cool stuff.
Oh,
that's good going.
That sound. That's good.
Yeah, that's it. Well, we recently reviewed A View to a Kill, as you probably know. Went over 2 parts. And basically, we know that A View to a Kill is your favourite Bond, at least one that you love a lot. So we thought it'd be great to bring you on again and have a chat with you about A View to Kill, what you love about it, and just basically get that sort of feeling, and perhaps why, it does get slated quite a lot. And it'd be nice to have the other side of the fence, to get that argument for the pros for A View to Kill. So I guess first off then, Mark, what is it about A View to a Kill that flicks your switch?
I don't understand the animosity to this film. It's everything's there. It's ridiculous that I'm even having to defend it. No, seriously. For me, it was the first Bond film that I anticipated. I was brought into the world of Bond reluctantly through Octopussy at the cinema, and that blew me away. And then View to a Kill was the first one that I saw covered in the press, the first one that had a pop video that was sort of shown on the local news. So it was the first one that I built the hype up for. And it didn't disappoint. I find it a really cool 80s Bond film. It's perhaps the 80s Bond film in the way that Spy Who Loved Me or Live and Let Die are the 70s Bond films. And perhaps that GoldenEye is the 90s Bond film. I think View to a Kill is definitely 85. It came out in that great 85 hot summer. I remember I was 9.5 and Live Aid was on and Duran Duran were performing A View to a Kill across the globe. It was a real sort of massive media event. So it sort of came in the wake of that a bit. And one of the classic criticisms pushed at the film is that, Roger's too old, and he'll say he was too old. But, Harrison Ford was like in his 70s playing Han Solo, and I saw it with God Kids, and neither of them sort of didn't like it because Han Solo was too old. I don't think you notice those things as kids. Admittedly, if the Bond fans that have been fortunate enough to grow up with the Bond films at the cinema, one by one, I think perhaps it may have been a different experience for them. But for me, I just find it a really fun caper. It's got, if you look at the locations are the locations. We didn't have that for a little while in Bond. San Francisco is San Francisco. We're not in Morocco doubling up for sort of Soviet Afghanistan. Paris is Paris. In the same way, London and Skyfall, which I think you guys touched upon in your last podcast there. So that's sort of the beginning of why I love it so much. That
was a very long and passionate answer. I like it. It was great. We could have just put our feet up for a while and just let you go there.
Yeah.
I love it. No, it's when we talked about that the other day. Is that whole thing of it divides opinion, this one, doesn't it? And everybody, you either just love it for what it is, or you go, oh, that's the one where Roger was old and it's rubbish and blah blah blah. And I think you can latch onto that one factor and just let that spoil what is otherwise a great movie. And I think I said myself a couple of weeks ago, I was like, there's room for an older Bond. Like there's no need, like you've got to be curious about what happens to that character. I know he's supposed to always be 35 or whatever it is, but like what happens to him when he gets a bit older, and what happens when he leaves the 00 section and all that kind of stuff, And I know we're not going down that route with A View to Kill, but like there's room for it, man. And like I feel like he carries it off in A View to Kill really well, Yeah,
it's glorious to see like Patrick Macnee, Robert Brown, Lois Maxwell at the races, and they're not pretending to be like 30-something. There's a sort of autumnal end of term, sort of dignity to all of them at the beginning of the film. And yes, they've come a long way with the whole series. I think it's perhaps the first line in the sand where Bond just, we then have Dalton. I think that was the beginning of a new age, even though John Glenn and Cubby, it was still very much an Eon 80s production unit. I think that perhaps A View to a Kill wasn't just the swan song to Roger Moore, it was perhaps the swan song to that first wave, that first era of Bond.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, definitely. And I think, again, with people that watch the film, if they have that thing in mind about the age or whatever it might be, it generally tends to be the age. I just can't think what else it could be, because we obviously reviewed it recently. Look at Mayday and look at Max Zorin, like two of the best villains in the series together. Yeah, exactly. Like one alone would be memorable enough. Put them both together, visually, they look amazing. The backstory is incredible. They're scary as hell. Like, one's a complete psychotic machine gunning in his own men, and the other one has got the scariest looking sort of stare that you'll ever find.
Yeah. No, I find that's something else, actually. It was really cool casting to have Grace Jones, who was like a model. She'd done, I think, was it Red Dawn, and she'd been around and done a few films. But to have her, she was part of that Andy Warhol model circuit. There was a very, very different vibe. And also Christopher Walken, he was the first actor that had won an Oscar and come onto Bond. And again, he had a bit of cool cachet. It was sort of Christopher Walken and Grace Jones are you could argue, like the first incarnation of that casting, where, you know, the Bardems, the Monica Bellucci's, they really went for cool casting. And yes, Grace Jones can't act, but she just looks as menacing as hell, just stood there, and she's still a bit weird, and it's still a bit, what is that Gautier hat thing? What is that? You know, and I like that. I like that sort of, she's a very jagged character. And then you've got this sort of Aryan playboy prince, played by Walken. I think it's utterly ridiculous and comic book in a way that Bond films can sometimes be.
What do you? I tell you what's interesting, because obviously there's this story about David Bowie obviously being thought about for Zorin originally, and David Bowie is one of those people who's like, you almost look at him throughout various stages of his career and it looks like he's from a different planet, doesn't he? Do you know what I mean? Yes. It doesn't quite feel human. And I get the same thing about Mayday. I'm like, I can't imagine Grace Jones being a child and growing up and going to school and doing all those normal things. She just feels like she landed from a different planet and was just that her entire life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. She is, even now, she's still a sort of mystery. Sort of, how old is she? She hasn't aged that badly. So and it was also the first henchwoman for a long time. We hadn't had that. We, sort of had the Caroline Munros and a few 70s bad bitches, but we hadn't had that for a long time. And I love the whole look of it. And if you ask a lot of Americans and gay Americans, if you say anything about what do you like about Bond, they'll go Mayday. They'll say Grace Jones. I'm trying to. There's a couple of drag queens I know in San Francisco, and I'm urging them every time I see them, please have a Bond night. Amazing as Mayday. Please do it once when we're around, please.
Sweet, sounds good.
Well, if they do and you end up going there, you'll have to report on all the James Bond costumes and everything like that.
Location report.
That'd be amazing.
I've already cast.
Yeah.
So for the benefit of everybody who's listening and not watching the YouTube feed, you've got quite the A View to a Kill display on your sofa behind you. So talk us through that. Yeah. What have you got there for us?
I've got my Roger Moore autograph here.
Very nice.
See that there. With my little Cub One Matchbox toy.
Lovely.
About some vinyl, the old James Bond storybook that came out at the time, which I found in a charity shop. But I did what a lot of young Bond fans do and cut out the pictures and put them on the wall.
Dude.
That's just like horrific to look at. I did it with the Star Wars as well. But I remember this was like fantastic because we didn't have YouTube or clips or stills. So just have a book with pictures from the film. I'm looking at this now. This is look at the fan damage there. So yeah, that's my sort of little bits. Couple of bits I dug out of the loft. I don't always have a View to a Kill sofa.
Oh, you're disappointing us now. So one of the things I always think about View to a Kill is like the visuals, man. Like in the terms of the marketing side of things, right? So behind you there, you've got the poster on the vinyl there of Rog on the Golden Gate Bridge with Stacey Sutton on one side, and then on the other side, the other one is Roger and Mayday back to back. That kind of back to back with the gun up and all that kind of stuff. And like that, especially the back to back image. That's such a striking, memorable image. And when we reviewed it, we were talking about there's a lot of scenes in A View to a Kill that should have the same like iconic status as like the Golden Girl, for example, or the Laser Table and all that kind of stuff. And it's like some of the marketing for that film was wicked, and I still remember. I was very, very young when View to a Kill came out, but like, do you remember having those little red clocks, the little red View to a Kill clock? I remember one of those. I had one of those in my house when I was a kid. Like, it's like that seems to be a time gone past that you don't get anymore with like the Bond merchandise and stuff. It's almost like a glimpse into a time when they still made all the toys and all that kind of shit, you know.
Yeah. We sort of think merchandising is everywhere in cinema now, but Bond was sort of doing that way before Star Wars in a different small way. No, I loved the image. I think it's that. I remember the first time I saw that teaser poster. I think there was an element of yellow about it with this back-to-back sort of ebony and ivory casting of Roger Moore and Grace Jones there. I remember finding that just fascinating and sort of very adult as well. That's something that when you're a kid, Bond films are like this little portal into adulthood and being cool, and you're not quite sure why. So you've got, it's quite a provocative picture with Grace Jones. There's a lot of leg and thigh going on. Admittedly, it's sort of artistically stretched there. But yes, I remember seeing that at the cinema, and also having Christopher Walken in a little box. I was thinking, oh, who's Christopher Walken? Why does he have his name in a box? And when I did Catching Bullets, my book, I think I said, can we just have someone's name in a box like Christopher Walken there? And they go, why? I said, I don't know, but I just remember that big, sort of like, because he's big. I think there was a sort of point where they were trying to they got Christopher Walken, a cool sort of East Coast actor, to be in a Bond film.
Very nice.
Another thing I do like about it was also, maybe we'll get onto that, is it's Americanness. It's a real American Bond film. And you guys were saying perhaps we can't have Bond going back to America because of all of his. Sorry, I've just been distracted there by a pop-up that's come up from a friend. Go away.
No.
I've been really distracted by that. I don't. I think we can go back to America and have another Bond film with some of it set in America. But I love how they use America in the film, and West Sussex, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know. I think what we were talking about, wasn't it, was how you see America so often in films. It sort of like loses its exotic sort of nature. Like when you see Rome in Spectre or something, it has that sort of classic feel to it, doesn't it? Which I feel like somewhere like an obvious place would be New York or even Washington DC, somewhere like that. I think. For Bond, but
there's a sort of bit of history. I mean, I don't always try to claw it back to this, but there's like a gay liberation reason that A View to a Kill took part in San Francisco, and I'll try and keep it brief and go backwards. But there was Harvey Milk, who Sean Penn won the Oscar for playing, and that great San Francisco politician who was very out and did great things for the gay community in America. But sadly, he got assassinated with his colleague Mayor Moscone at City Hall.
Right.
But Dianne Feinstein, who was the mayor of San Francisco, I believe at the time, or the senator or someone, and she's incidentally the woman that always signs in the new presidents, so she's got an interesting job come January. But she wanted to change the perception of San Francisco. It had a very bad period in the early 80s with following that assassination of the two guys, plus the trial that wasn't perhaps well handled. And HIV/AIDS really hit San Francisco. So she wanted to change the fortunes and perceptions of San Francisco. And she invited Cubby in, and they had quite carte blanche a lot on all the streets, and obviously Golden Gate Bridge, and they were allowed to do so much.
Wow.
But the curious thing, I remember watching it recently thinking, they had this horrible atrocity where two guys were killed, shot dead at City Hall. So they let in a film that has someone shot dead at City Hall. I always found that a little bit strange.
Wow.
But they had a massive launch there with Duran Duran at the Palace of Fine Arts, which is a curious place there. And San Francisco really embraced A View to a Kill a lot.
That's the premiere was San Francisco, wasn't it?
Yes.
Welcome. Yeah. And I'm guessing obviously that's for all the sort of favours that Diane's gave to Eon and everything like that, which is superb. And now you mentioned there, obviously there was sort of some dark times going on around that sort of time. Now, what we kind of, when we were reviewing it recently, we kind of found out while we were watching it, is the film is very much dark and light as well. We obviously mentioned Walken and Mayday, but in Bond is he doesn't do much evil stuff in A View to a Kill. What he does, any sort of action is quite sort of soft in comparison to like the villain. For instance, everything that we see with Zorin, like the impeller underwater, the strangling with Mayday, all of this sort of stuff, it seems to be, for a Roger in particular, very, very dark. It's almost License to Kill territory in some aspects. And everything that Roger does, for the fight in Stacey Sutton's house, he's obviously got the rock salt gun, so he can't kill them properly, and he has a little fight. But it seems to be a conscious decision to make Bond not so much a killer in A View to a Kill, and contrast that with a very, very dark Max Zorin and Mayday. Did you find that when you were watching it? I guess that kind of, it felt a bit like that.
Yeah, I mean, I always like that suggestion that there's some sort of Nazi botched experiment. They're the experiment that went wrong, plus on women that perhaps weren't up for it as well. That's quite a grim backstory. They present it well and don't go too far into it, but it's sort of, there's a suggestion almost that Dr. Mortner is Zorin's father. He has that weird sort of interest in him and sort of almost parental responsibility for him, especially at the end when it's all kicking off on the Golden Gate Bridge. So I find that always a bit sinister, especially as we've learned more about, Nazi experimentation. But then you've got the flip of that is that you've got Grace Jones's Mayday character, and traditionally, I'm not a big expert, but traditionally Nazis weren't too great with people of colour. So the idea that they were tampering and playing with and coming up with this amazing character that ends up being called Mayday, and her being a lady of race is sort of, I find curious as well. It's reading too much into it. As I say, they're comic book. It's Harvey Two-Face and I can't think of the name now, but it's a little bit of that. It's probably not implied. It's how we read it now.
Yeah. And some people we've sort of mentioned obviously have been a little bit non-favourable for the film. And aside from Roger's age, I have heard quite a few people say about Mayday switching sides at the end and how she shouldn't have done and how that didn't work. But when we were looking at it, it completely worked for us in terms of, she's just been scorned by her lover. He was going to kill her by flooding her, and
to think that creep loved me, that she's actually just a woman spurned, and that's enough to make anyone blow themselves up on a mine with lots of explosives under there.
So I tell you what we should do then. We should look at the most popular things that people say brings A View to a Kill down. The things that are popular to kind of slag off, and the reasons why people think A View to a Kill isn't a good movie. And then let's talk about it and see what you think about it. So I say let's start off with the first one, which is a typical one that comes up a lot, which is California Girls during the pre-title sequence. Tell me about that. What does that make you feel?
I don't mind it. I'm just going to say that about everything that's wrong with it. It was a bit of a gag. It was like the Tarzan gag in Octopussy. It's a very Rogerism, if that's not a weird word to use. I don't mind it. And I know you guys were saying the other day, but I quite like the way it just flips into the sort of John Barry seriousness. It's almost like that's the moment, let's move on. What's perhaps more grating with that moment, if you want to be a person that finds it grating, is that it's like some library stock version of California Girls. It's not actually the Beach Boys. It's some sort of covers band. But I don't know, maybe we could have had Brian Wilson and the gang just sort of by the ice edge just playing it live. That could have worked. Maybe people would have liked the film more if they'd done that.
So are we getting a thumbs up for the Beach Boys or the California Girls, I should say?
Yes, it's 20 seconds, not even that. It doesn't bother me, no.
All right, good stuff. Next one then, I would say another popular one is Stacey Sutton. Now, you hear many things about Stacey Sutton, one of which is the age gap. It's ridiculous, and she was almost half Roger's age, which to me, I say, good on you, Roger. Go for it, my son. So there's that. But the other thing is the screaming Stacey. She likes to rip one out, doesn't she? So how do you feel about Stacey? Yeah. Talk about that for us.
She's not the worst American Bond girl.
Okay, who is? Give us that.
She's not the worst. I love the fact that she can do geological sort of assessments whilst in a sort of silk mini dressing gown. I think that's practical and useful at the same time. I think allegedly it was going to be Priscilla Presley. That was who they'd lined up.
Really?
Yeah. I think A.J. Chowdhury, in that great book, Some Kind of Hero, he goes into the production history of A View to a Kill, and yes, they'd lined up Priscilla Presley. I don't know why she didn't do it. Perhaps because Elvis's last film he saw before he died was Spy Love Me, so maybe it might have been a jinx. Who knows? Right, Tanya Roberts. I don't mind her. She's stunning to look at with her weird sort of feather cut Van Halen hair, and those eyes you guys were talking about the other day. Those eyes are just like, I can't stop staring at those glassy sort of watery eyes. Yes, she's younger than Roger, and I think actually had she been a stronger actress, the age thing may not have been too much of an issue. She wasn't perhaps the biggest casting. She'd done Sheena, I think, around the time, Queen of the Jungle, which is a curious film to watch, plus some Charlie's Angels sort of stuff. I think there's a curious thing going on in the sort of 80s Bond films where they are aware that Roger's a bit older, and he becomes a sort of almost like the guardian uncle, like the sort of godfather figure. Now, yes, godfathers don't tend to bed their goddaughters in various showers and steamed up rooms, but from, I think, For Your Eyes Only, Octopus, and A View to a Kill, you've got 3 women protecting their father's legacies. And I like how Roger sort of comes into it and sort of sees that that's an importance for her. Yes, she does do a lot of hanging about. I think there's something like 17 screams, and she's literally just left hanging at every turn, or rather, her rather hairy-legged stunt double is sort of left hanging at every turn. But I don't mind it. She's like Fay Ray in King Kong. She's sort of forever tied to the railway tracks or hanging off a cliff. She's forever needing rescuing, and I sort of think that's what. In defense of it, it's what Bond films are about. They're about the basics of matinee cinema. So having the damsel in distress without pretending she's his match and equal is actually sort of nowadays refreshing.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, isn't it? That's always, every time they trot them out, they're referred to as Bond women or Bond ladies now, and it's like,
and
I'm a different kind of Bond girl. No, you're not. You're not different. You're the same as all the other ones. Do you know what I mean? It's that same old story, isn't it? Yeah.
Lowell at the premiere of License to Kill at Leicester Square saying, I'm the match for Bond. I'm like, oh dear. And it's almost like this mantra that they all get told to sort of say at the press release. And they rarely are as well. I think Wei Lin was one of the few that sort of really met Bond, you know. Anyway.
Yeah, I'll give you that. So I suppose the third, for me, I don't know if you've got any more in mind, Chris, but the third and sort of final big point that people tend to bring up is obviously Roger's age. So do you think, what do you think about that thing of exploring what happens to an older Bond? Do you think that's worth doing, or do you think it's like Cubby used to say, you don't want to see Bond fail as the youngster, and that's why he poo-pooed like the reboot Bond for all those years, and you should always see Bond in his prime? And what's your take on that?
Yeah. I just said before, I don't find Roger's age a problem. I wish they hadn't picked stuntmen that look older than him. That was sort of a different thing. And I also don't have a problem with the stunt work. People say, oh, but you can see it's a stuntman at every turn. I said, I can see it's a stuntman at every turn with Daniel Craig. You know, Daniel Craig's not doing a lot of that stuff. They get better at hiding it with masks and better wigs, but it's still blatantly not Daniel Craig. Because if it was Daniel Craig, you'd make sure we could see his face. So I don't think it's fair to level that at Roger all the time. I do like the autumnal Bond. That's something that intrigues me if Daniel Craig does a fifth. The idea that Bond's a little bit more mature, less phases him. I think there's a dignity to that. I'd still love to see Pierce Brosnan do one in that respect. It won't happen, but just to have that autumnal Bond being more perhaps the diplomat rather than the young buck.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like we were saying the other day, Chris, and there's like, you in the books and stuff, you want to hear about Bond's journey through the Navy, how he became a commander and all that kind of stuff. That's the story that I'd love them to tell in the young Bond books, for example. So there's all that, but there is so much room for like what happens next, like what happens when he retires from the 00 section, or does he get killed eventually? You know, you just what is that story? It's one that needs to be told, I think.
Yeah, we don't want hit replacements are forever. We don't want sort of man with the golden commode. That's not going to make good telly. But Bond is always meant to be a bit of a veteran. Anyway, he's meant to be someone that's has settled into his his mind and himself. He's got a taste in food and women and cars and traveling. He's meant to be slightly older. Anyway, he's not. I think with Daniel Craig in Casino Royale, that was as young as they pitched the character's mind, let alone the actor. Although saying that, Connery was sort of early 30s when he started. Lazenby was 29. I think 29 and 30 nowadays, though, are very different to that age, perhaps 50 years ago. And also even 55, to say, oh, Bruce Willis looks too old in Die Hard 4 or 5 or whatever it is, no one ever says that. Whereas, Roger Moore was too old. He was sort of 55, 58 in The View to a Kill. I don't have a problem with it. It's a great, fun film. It rewards your time as well. I always think any film, as long as it rewards your time, and when you walk out of a Bond film, you should feel 7 feet tall. And when you walk out of A View to a Kill still, walk out of my lounge, you still sort of, I love that swagger and panache of it. It's a really, I think I've said already, but it's a very contemporary Bond film as well, with all of its, its technology, and it's aged terribly now, but all the microchips and all of that. After the Octopussy was quite a classical Bond film. It's quite a sort of vintage Bond film with its airships and its steam trains and its old colonial palaces, and now you've sort of got San Francisco and America and microchips. It's quite an airships. It's quite a sort of, there's a real flip of Octopussy, actually.
Yeah, for sure. So I remember you said last time you came on JBR, you said you've usually got your favourite Bond film and then what you think is the best Bond film, and they're not the same thing. No. So give us a rundown of that. Is A View to Kill your favourite Bond film, or is it the one you think is the best Bond film?
It's not the best Bond film. I personally think On Her Majesty's Secret Service is the best Bond film. It's my favourite, though. It's always been my favourite for lots of personal reasons. As I've said before in lots of other places, my granddad worked with Cubby. He drove that car. It's curious to see a chauffeur in the film wearing the same uniform as my grandfather did when he worked for Cubby. So I love that. I get into that because of the sort of personal connection as well. It's also quite a Cubby film. Cubby was into his horse racing. It's California. There's a lot of Cubby interest in it, and Cub One as well, the car.
That's really nice. I like that. It must be amazing every time you watch on to see that car, like you're saying, to see the sort of Tibbet character and having that link. That's got to make you, look, there it is. There it is. Oh, Cub One there.
Yeah, how many people get to have a Matchbox toy of a car their granddad drove for work?
That is awesome. That's so good. Now, okay, so here's an interesting question. If someone came along and said, okay, Mark, A View to a Kill, we know you like it. I've never seen it. I've never seen a Bond film, but I'd like you to tell me why I should watch A View to a Kill. What is it about A View to a Kill? What scenes, perhaps, in A View to a Kill would you show them as little teasers to get them interested to watch the film? What would you say to that?
I would say it's a 2-hour film that rewards your time, like all good Bond films do. It's one of the last flourishes of an era of filmmaking that started in 1962 with Dr. No. It's Eon Productions. Yes, they're scaling down. Their budgets were perhaps chipped away at each time by MGM in the 80s, but it's still everyone on full cylinder. I love the experience of the film, if that makes sense. You can see everyone's on top gear, as it were. People will say, it's everyone's getting a bit tired, and the editing and the titles are getting a bit jaded. But I just love seeing those people in full flow, and I think that's also like why the Ascot scenes are so great, because you've got the old guard, and there is a sense of finality to it, and it's not just the end of Roger Moore's era; it's the end of Lois Maxwell. It's the end of Q being with that gang as well. He carries on, but it's the end of that reign. I've got there's a few scenes I like in it. It's a scene that maybe won't sell it, but I think it's a scene that sells the film's dignity, and that's a lot of the chateau scenes with Bond literally having wine with Stacey. And maybe it's because the John Barry score is so beautiful and autumnal, and it's sort of like there's an out of Africa dignity to that score, which really helps the film. And I love those scenes with Roger and Christopher Walken and Scarpine and Manning Redwood, and they're all just slightly jostling for attention, and Moore's looking through them all. I really like that, because it's actually Bond being Bond. He does a lot of spying in the film. He might not be angry assassin Bond, but he's forever doing surveillance. He's with those sunglasses, and he's often watching and looking and finding things out. He does a lot of spying in A View to a Kill, including it's the first time the character is actually in Russia as well, sort of Alaska or Siberia. Sorry, it's Siberia, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the sort of first time he goes across the Iron Curtain to a degree.
That's true, yeah. And I think Tom and I mentioned that. I mean, we love a bit of sneaky. When we watch Bond, that's what you want to see. If you're watching a spy film, you want to see Bond doing some sneaky. And sometimes you'll get a Bond film and it's action piece after action piece. And you're thinking, okay, but you need the bits in between. You need the parts where the film's not going at breakneck pace. It's slowed down, but you're watching and you're learning with Bond. And in A View to a Kill, he spies during the day and at night when he's going around the factory and the stables and all of that. And I think that's a huge plus point with A View to a Kill. Like you said, we just see Bond spying. And how can you not love that? It's fantastic.
Roger Moore's very resourceful in this film. He's taking the air out of the tyre underwater. He's using fire hose as a rope. He's using a bin. It's a very resourceful Bond in this film, without many gadgets as well. I'm sort of struggling to think, he's got the glasses and that weird check reader thing that we all carry just in case.
I've got one just here, actually.
Yeah. I always loved that when you go to restaurants in the 80s for your birthday, your mum's birthday, they would have that check thing where they would sort of push it off and on to make an indentation template. Yeah. And I always thought, is that all Roger was doing? He was just taking a receipt to give to Stacey Sutton.
Yeah, I think so. Now, there is something that we do have to mention, Mark. It's something we've mentioned on the show, and I know you will have noticed it, particularly in A View to a Kill, and it is the Sir Roger Moore grunt, the Sir Roger noise.
Oh, yeah.
Tom does an amazing impersonation of it. Can you do it for us, please?
You've given me the big build-up now, Chris. I'm nervous. So what it is, I believe the first time I noticed it, because I've been keeping my eye out for it as we've been going through the Roger films, and I believe the first one where he does the full one is when they burst out of the window on Octopus's Island into the water, right? And they have the little fight there. Yeah. And basically what it is he does this. Oh! Do you know the grunt I mean? It goes through several notes. It's not just a ooh, it's a oh, and
it's the audio booth grunt.
Yeah,
it wasn't shot on location.
Precisely.
It's a bit like Grace Jones has a weird sort of sex grunt when she jumps off. Like, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, she does. Yeah,
you're right. She does.
There's a lot of. It's almost like they ran out of time to do a soundtrack, and they just got all these 70s porn cues to sort of just cover over everything.
That's a good point. I wonder whether the Roger grunt is the same one every time, and they've just literally dragged it in and edited it in as the.
Oh, they must have done. Interesting. The question is whether the Roger Moore grunt and the Grace Jones grunt were recorded at the same time or not.
I doubt it. I think it's quite
highly unlikely.
They weren't grunting together at the same time. They were not. I think there was a creative differences. She would never turn up on time. She was quite lax. I think I remember hearing stories that it was Barbara Broccoli. This is alleged that Barbara Broccoli suggested Grace Jones, but only if she looked after her. So I think Barbara was sort of had to make sure Grace Jones would turn up, because Grace Jones didn't understand filmmaking hours. Why do I need to be on set at 5 a.m? I'm still going to be out at Studio 54 at that time.
Barbara Broccoli, how mature was that woman for her years back in the day, and the responsibility that she could take on? I'm forever impressed by that woman. She's my she's amazing, isn't she?
That's actually an interesting point, because those 80s Bond films were very valuable learning curves for Barbara, and also working with Michael. And yes, her name starts to creep up the credits. I think she gets I can't remember if she gets title credits credit on View to a Kill, but and she was often in charge of. She would take something. I think she did in Octopussy. She looked after the whole circus scenes. That was her project at the time, and I think when she did Octopussy, she was 22, 23. So the idea, yes, she's Cubby's daughter, and there's a trust and faith there, but that's still a big, like you say, it's still a big undertaking. And maybe a film like View to a Kill and Living Daylights, they they're the reason we have Bond films now, because they were a great learning ground. You had the older guards, the Richard Maybaums, the John Glenns, but you've also got not the underlings, but the young crew coming up and just cutting their teeth. A View to a Kill is one of those Bond films that's also part of that old era of British filmmaking where people would learn their craft. You'd have grandsons coming up, and it's still there. It's still there with Bond, but it's less common nowadays. So that's another thing. It's a film that's about a different era of British filmmaking.
So here's a question then. With your unique link to the Bond world, with your granddad being Cubby's driver, like, you must have some insider stories on either A View to a Kill, because obviously that's what we're talking about, or the Bond filmmaking process in general. There's got to be some stories that you're privy to.
It was more about personalities than sort of stories. Certain people, certain actors endeared themselves to crew members and chauffeurs, and certain ones didn't. I'm not going to name names here. I allude to it in the book slightly. My grandfather was always very circumspect. You had to sort of really push him to sort of answer anything about Bond, because I was a big Bond fan and he knew it, but he didn't want to be probed on it too much. So I think there was a sort of secrecy and diplomacy there, which is why he ended up working with them for so long, because it was a two-way sort of two-way relationship. He actually, by the time of View to a Kill, he was half retired. I think the story always went, they wouldn't let him retire. Cubby said, when Grandad first wanted to retire around the time of Spy Who Loved Me, 76, 77, Cubby said, no, you're younger than me, and if I can still produce these films, the least you can do is drive the fucking car. And I think that was the British language. It was done with warmth and love, though, and he ended up staying with them for a while. And yes, driving Cub 1 about. And I never saw the car physically. I'd always been told about it and heard about it, but I never physically saw and touched it until it was in Bond in Motion. And that was quite an odd moment, just looking at the size of it as well. It's like an airship itself, like this metallic blimp. Yeah. I'm thinking, and I remember my granddad's front drive. How did that car get up that front drive? Because it was often left there overnight when he was looking after it, or he was doing the Heathrow run or the London run. He'd have the car overnight, and I'm like, I do not understand how that car ever got in those roads. And we asked for the car. I sort of asked Barbara, would it be at all possible to have the car at our wedding? We got married last year at Pinewood, and I was like, we'll ask. But I mean, she looked into it, but it was just logistically not possible because of where it physically is in that exhibition. But that would have been a nice touch. But it wasn't to be.
That's a shame. That would have been a touch, yeah.
But getting married at Pinewood, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has ever done that before. That's amazing. George
Lazenby married Diana Rigg there, but it went really wrong. So, we didn't have a Bond wedding. I'll stress that, but we had a Bond. There was a Bond element to the day.
I imagine in your mind it was a Bond wedding, but it was kind of toned down exteriorly for the other half, so he perhaps didn't know as much of Bondness as in your mind there was.
Well, we had a lot of Bond music played throughout the dinner and the service. In fact, my cousin, who's a very accomplished violinist, she played Wine with Stacey from A View to a Kill as we were doing the certificate signing. So I'd always wanted that, and that was quite humbling. And I didn't realise, but you guys are familiar with Heatherden Hall and the house. Our main reception was in the ballroom there, the long ballroom. And what I didn't realise till afterwards was that pool room that's next to it was the room where Christopher Walken and Grace Jones have their sort of kickboxing rehearsal. And I didn't click. A friend said, I recognise that fountain, but I don't know why. And we looked back after the wedding and said, that's where they filmed that. Because presumably, because the Bond stage had burnt down, they had to be a bit resourceful and try and find other places to shoot in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which they tend to make a good job of, don't they, Ian?
Yeah. But it was crazy getting married at Pinewood, knowing that the Spectre set was there. Security staff would say, "Oh, you know what's going on in the Bond stage, don't you?" And I'm like, "No, tell me." And I was like, "Wow, quite cool." And we were very lucky. I wanted to surprise for my husband and the guests. We had a telegram from Roger Moore, which I read out, and that was quite cool. And quite surreal as well. So it's weird how things go full circle in life. And then on our honeymoon, we ended up going out with Maud Adams in LA. So it was sort of like crazy doing DIY chores. And incidentally, I asked her, "Are you in A View to a Kill? Are you in any of those scenes?" And she says, "I don't think I am, but it always made a great story." Because I don't think
there it is.
She did visit, was there, but she feels she never got in front of the camera because she didn't want to do that. So it might have become a myth. It might be true as well. Yeah, she feels it was a bit of a myth.
I think you're probably right. We both tried to freeze frame every little segment around the tram and around Fisherman's Wharf, and occasionally you'll see message forums where Maud Adams is in it, and they'll show a little picture. And the woman supposedly who it is looks nothing like Maud Adams, half as tall and all this sort of thing. So no. I think that's probably right. But how cool is that? Like wedding in Pinewood, honeymoon with Maud Adams.
Yeah,
that's pretty
it was surreal. We went for lunch. It was basically saying thank you for being involved in the book as well. And Daryl Hannah was next to us, and that was crazy. And it sounded like that woman really looks like Daryl Hannah from Splash. And go, oh no, it is Daryl Hannah. Where are we? We're outside Paramount Studios. But yeah, you know LA, don't you, Tom? It's a crazy place. You do just see people out of context. I find.
It is. You see lots. You'll just be out walking around, or be in a random cafe, and you'll see somebody who played somebody's dad on Dawson's Creek or something crazy like that, and then some random star. I bumped into Xenia Onatop in the supermarket once. Didn't go well. All that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a crazy place, that one. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Mark. So obviously you're the author of Catching Bullets, Memoirs of a Bond Fan. So all of our look at that. Chris has got his copy right there. Look, loving it.
Bless you. Yes.
Yes. So where can people find more about you? Where can they find out more about the book and all that kind of stuff? We're
on Facebook, Catching Bullets, Memoirs of a Bond Fan. That's probably the best site for just keeping updated with the Bond things I get up to and see and observe and want to talk about. I've also got a website, www.markoconnell.co.uk. I'm on Twitter. Easy to find me on there. Next year, 2017 is going to be a good year because I might be doing another new book. So, so
fantastic.
Is it going to be a Bond-related book, Mark, or is it going to be something else?
I'm not saying anything at the moment, but I'm saying watch this space.
All right.
Wow.
Exciting.
Okay. Definitely keep us informed about that then.
I will do.
All right then.
Lovely.
So just to sign off then, Mark, what's the one thing you're going to say to everybody who doesn't like A View to a Kill? You get the last words.
Watch it. Don't listen to some of the sheep fans. Be a shepherd, not a sheep. Watch it.
Beautiful.
Love it. Be a shepherd, not a sheep. Fantastic, Mark. That's amazing.
Sweet. All right, man. We'll see you soon.
Take care, Mark.
Take it easy, mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Cool. Well, there we go. That's clearly a man who's deeply in love with A View to a Kill. You can tell from the display of memorabilia on the sofa behind him. He's spent some time to arrange that for us and make it all look nice with his Union Jack cushion as well. I'm liking that style.
I like that.
Yeah. What did you think, Chris? Are you sold on A View to a Kill now after chatting to Mark?
Well, definitely. I mean, I think I obviously from the review, my appreciation for it has definitely increased. But yeah, I mean, you can tell Mark is a big fan, and the stuff that he likes, I think, is similar to what we like in the film, which is really cool. Yeah. But I like the passion. Passion is important in life, and seeing all that stuff on his sofa behind him was brilliant. And he obviously said that it's only a fraction of what he has, which is really cool. But also having your wedding at Pinewood, man, and then your honeymoon, and Maud Adams pops along. How amazing is that?
That's a little bit like, isn't it? It's a little bit like The Man with the Golden Gun, where you've got a good night there in bed, ready to go, and then Maud Adams just pops in, and you're like, actually, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to go hang out with Maud for a bit. Yeah, I like that. That's good. It doesn't get any better than that, does it?
No, definitely not.
Good stuff.
Happy days. Nice one,
Right then, have you had enough, Chris, or should we have another guest on the show to talk more of View to a Kill? What do you think?
Man, this is like an extra Christmas present, isn't it? I reckon let's hit it. Let's go for another one.
Let's do it. So who have we got this time, Chris? Talk to me.
So we've got Andrew McNess, author of A Close Look at A View to a Kill.
Okay, today we have a special guest on the show, which is author of the book A Close Look at A View to a Kill. With me is Andrew McNess. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you.
It's good to have you on board, man. How are you feeling today? Good?
Oh, wow. All is well. Thank you for having me.
So you're calling from Melbourne, Australia, is that right?
I am. Yes.
So I just have to ask a quick question before we go into the sort of main quick fire round. Growing up in Melbourne as a young lad, were there many Bond fans around? Did you think you were the only one, or was that, have you always been a Bond fan since you were young?
Yeah, look, I saw the films really from a very young age. The first one I ever saw was Thunderball on TV, and I think I must have been 6 or 7, something like that. It was one summer. Thunderball, The Man with the Golden Gun, Live and Let Die. So yeah, look, I guess I was growing up in the 80s, and I suppose it was very much that time where you had James Bond, but you also had Indiana Jones coming in. You had, you were looking forward to Superman 3 or Superman 4. There was Star Wars, all of those. So in a way, when I found James Bond again, or sort of reunited with him, it was in the months leading up to GoldenEye, actually, and I decided that I would sit down and watch all the films again, and that's when I really fell in love with Bond, and also rediscovered View to a Kill. So
cool.
Yeah,
very nice, good stuff.
Yes.
So as we always do, then, Andrew, we're going to kick off with our 007 quickfire questions. Basically, this just gives our listeners a good, broad idea of what your tastes in Bond are. Now, obviously, you're on the record of being a hardcore View to a Kill fan, so that's already out there. So I'm going to kick things off with the very first question, which is probably a pretty easy one, which is, Mr. McNess, who is your favourite James Bond?
Well, I'm to be honest, I'm not sure that I have a favourite James Bond. There may be a soft spot towards Roger. I certainly admired what he did coming in after Connery, which must have been, vaguely terrifying. But I guess in a way, I almost have favourite performances. And so, for instance, my favourite Roger Moore performance is in Octopussy. My favourite Connery performance is Never Say Never Again, even though I'm not a huge fan of that film, but I really love his performance.
That's really interesting.
Yes, yeah. And then Pierce Brosnan, it would be Die Another Day. It's often, I find, when they're up to their third or fourth film, when they're really relaxed in the role and they just, it's effortless. So, yeah. So, I actually don't think that I have a favourite.
Interesting.
That's a nice answer. We haven't had anything like that before, have we, Tom, in terms of best performances? And some interesting choices there. Just going back to Never Say Never Again, Tom and I reviewed that a couple of years ago now, and it gets slated a lot. But the film itself, it's not too bad for the majority. The end, it sort of peters off. But Connery is really on form in that film. He is really on form. Yes. Like the humour, even the fighting, he's up to scratch a bit. And that often gets overlooked. So that's a really good shout. I like that. Very good.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
Okay, so on to question 2 then. Do you have a favourite James Bond girl? Favourite Bond girl from the series?
Well, I really like, just with the last film, Léa Seydoux, I think it's pronounced. I thought she was great. I thought she did a wonderful job. But I was thinking, prior to that, it would have been the woman from Skyfall, Severin. I can't even remember the actress's name, but I thought that scene, that whole you're scared scene at the casino was such a wonderful scene, and she really stuck in my mind. So yeah, probably those two.
So you're happy with the recent crop of Bond girls, then, by the sounds of things?
Yeah,
I am. Yeah, very much so. They've been a great lot for the Daniel Craig films, I think.
Cool stuff. Yeah. Okay, next question then. I think we might already know the answer to this one, but what is your favourite Bond film?
Well, I could lie, I suppose. But, it would be A View to a Kill. But having said that, not too far behind License to Kill and Dr. No. For some reason, it's just one I keep on going back to. So, and I mean, the first scene, with Connery is just amazing. It's so
unbeatable, for sure,
isn't it? Yes, yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier about how sometimes it takes a little while for people to get into the role, or maybe after the third or fourth film when they're really relaxed. Connery seemed to have it from the start. I think with Dr. No, he just had whatever people needed in James Bond. It was just there, wasn't it? Which is always pretty cool.
That's true. I just sort of undercut my whole point before there.
Okay, so on to question 4 then. I'm not sure if you've read all the Flemings or at least any of them, but do you have a favourite James Bond book? And it doesn't even have to be Fleming. Is there any favourite Bond book that you've read?
Look, I read the Flemings actually back around the time that I rewatched all the films, and I certainly have to admit to a slight preference towards the films rather than the books. Having said that, I was very drawn to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and so I would probably class that one as a favourite. Having said that, I read a great essay by a fellow called Brian McCaig, who writes a blog called the Bondologist blog, and he was writing about You Only Live Twice, and just reading his analysis of You Only Live Twice, I thought, gosh, I must have another read sometime. So I don't know, maybe that'll be the new favourite sometime soon. Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah. Majesty's is definitely a classic out of all of them. That's a great one.
Isn't it?
So next quickfire question then. If you can possibly answer this question, it is a tricky one.
Yeah.
If you can pick one scene in the whole series, what would be your favourite?
Well, actually, having seen some of your other interviews, I was a bit up to speed on that, and so I think probably the scene. I mean, it is hard to choose, but the one that I really like is from License to Kill, and it seems a fairly simple scene in essence, but it's where Bond and Sanchez are just having a cup of tea together at Sanchez's palatial estate. And I mean, it's all civil, it's all polite, but there's a really tense undercurrent, and I just think it's a beautifully handled scene, and both actors do a great job, and it's nicely directed too. So
very nice.
Yeah.
That
would be it.
That's another first we've had as an answer to that question. So that's a good one. Bond and Sanchez having a cup of tea.
Okay, on to question 7 then. Now you mentioned a bit on this earlier, but what is your actual earliest memory of Bond? Is it watching Thunderball for the first time, or was there anything prior to that leading up to it?
Yeah, it was Thunderball, and it was that scene in the pool, and it's after Connery has stabbed the henchman, and the shark is coming by. Yeah, that was the image that really stuck out for me, and I was probably hooked from that point anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, then. Second to last of the quickfire questions is: what is your favourite theme song from the series?
Well, I think You Only Live Twice is. Yeah, isn't it? And it's also how Barry uses them as themes throughout the films, which is wonderful. And I mean, with View to a Kill, for instance, I remember hearing that song for the first time and thinking, what on earth can John Barry do with that as a theme? And it worked beautifully. The theme he was able to create from it was such a lovely sort of poignant theme and all. So yeah, but probably you only live twice.
Nice. Okay. So for our last quickfire question, then, have you visited any of the James Bond locations? And if so, what has been your favourite? And what location would you like to visit the most that you haven't yet?
Well, I've visited San Francisco twice, and
did you go up the Golden Gate Bridge or?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Four times. Yeah. with the music going through my mind, all of that. And,
yes.
it was exciting to be there, but there was also a sense of hold on for your life as well, with some of the winds coming in. So San Francisco, and of course I sort of went around to Fisherman's Wharf and to California Street, and but of course going to San Francisco, it's also films like Vertigo, Basic Instinct, so on and so forth. So but haven't been to any other Bond locations. He sort of has to hurry up and make a film in Australia, but maybe the floating palace from Octopussy, just for its sheer unusualness. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, sounds good. So we've built your profile of bondage now, Andrew. We know where you're coming from. Right. We know what your tastes are. It's good. The listeners can relax into this conversation now because they know what you're all about. So that's good.
There's no excuses now.
So moving on to talk about A View to a Kill then. So you wrote the book, A Close Look at A View to a Kill. So how did that all come about? What made you decide you were going to sit down and write a book about A View to a Kill?
I always wondered when someone else was going to do it. I just thought, well, no one else is going to do this. Maybe I will. But I always thought that A View to a Kill was a very interesting Bond film. I thought it had some interesting plays on the formula. I think it had these villains who gave it such an interesting tone. That was, to me, the film felt quite idiosyncratic, even though it was often criticised as being overly formulaic. That just wasn't my experience of it. So I thought, well, maybe there's something in this. Maybe there's something to explore. And more than that, I thought it might also be something people would be interested in reading as well.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, I suppose A View to a Kill is one of those, isn't it? It definitely divides opinion. It's not like a Goldfinger where more or less everybody loves it. It's a kind of, most people either love it or hate it for various reasons. So I suppose those are the more interesting ones to sort of dig into, aren't they, really, when the popular opinion is divided like that, rather than the ones that everybody knows and loves,
Yes, possibly is. I mean, when I was first writing it, started writing it, I thought, how much attention do I give to some of the more negative critiques? And I thought, would it just be my own view on A View to a Kill? But then I thought, well, that would really, if it was just my point of view, and I hold the film in a very high regard, I thought, well, that really wouldn't be quite right. And so I thought that I would bring in, the thoughts and the opinions, even just as a point of comparison. Someone, for instance, might write that they think that the scene where Mayday, in a sense, turns to the side of good is a great letdown. But for myself, I find that scene works really, really effectively, and it stays absolutely true to her character and all. So, I was interested to also bring in, what the negative critiques were.
Cool.
So, obviously, A View to a Kill, it hits you when you see it. There must be something in that film that sort of grabs you. What is it about A View to a Kill itself which for you kind of sets it apart from maybe the other Bond films? There must be something there that you're sort of getting from the film which elevates it above the others. What sort of thing would that be? Can you expand on that?
I feel that Christopher Walken is a very unique Bond villain. I think it was interesting having this noticeably younger supervillain placed against this noticeably older Bond. There was quite an interesting dynamic there, I think. And just some interesting plays with the Bond formula. I mean, the whole thing with the airship this serene airship, floating over San Francisco Bay, as opposed to a race car, to a sports car, sorry, or it's just some interesting plays on the formula. I really admire Moore's acting as he interacts with Tanya Roberts, aka Stacey Sutton, because it's the sort of thing where he could so easily, to a timid character, he could be quite patronising, and Bond is paternal with it, but he never once falls into being patronising, I think. And the scene where he's lifting her up from the elevator, there's a line where he says, "Good girl, you're nearly there," and I reckon that would be the hardest line to say without sounding, just like the most patronising jerk there is. But he never once veers towards that, and I really admire that.
Well, Sir Roger is the true gentleman, isn't he, at the end of the day? So I'm sure he would never fall into that sort of ballpark. But there we go. Well, so, like we said, A View to a Kill does divide opinion amongst fandoms, doesn't it? Quite drastically. And what do you think? Why? Like the typical ones you often hear is, Roger was too old. That's probably the big one of the bunch. He's too old for it. Shouldn't have made it. He should have got Tim in or whatever at that point. The other one is the age difference between him and Stacey, and then typically speaking, it might be the snowboarding scene with the Beach Boys soundtrack and all that kind of stuff. So, I can see where people are coming from. The ones on the negative side of the thing, I can see the argument with those things, absolutely. But so where does that fall for you? With the division of opinion?
I think where this new sort of humour came in, where Bond seemed to be, where the Bond films were making a lot of sort of pop cultural references and jokes, of which A View to a Kill is part. And so it has its moments, such as the California Girls. And so, to me, that's just part of an era, and it doesn't throw me. If it occurred in a Timothy Dalton film, I think I would hate it. Same for a Daniel Craig film. I think it would be the same for Sean Connery. But I think there was something in Moore's performance. There was a sense, and I know for some people they felt this took them out of the action. I don't experience that myself, but there was a sense that Moore could, in a way, turn to the screen and say hi to the audience, or wink at the audience, and so I think that jokes like California Girls, for instance, to me, work in the context of a Roger Moore Bond film.
That's interesting.
That I certainly understand.
Sean tried winking at the camera at the end of Never Say Never Again, didn't he? And I don't know whether he pulled that off, but Roger, I feel like he could get away with anything, whatever he wanted to do, and he could pull it off, I think.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Look, that's certainly how I feel, but it's not how all. So yeah.
You mentioned also in the book a number of times, actually, how Bond's portrayal in A View to a Kill differed somewhat to what had come previously in the series. Obviously, you mentioned Roger Moore with the humour, and that was quite prevalent in some of his films. With For Your Eyes Only, it did go a bit darker. But you do mention in the book about how Roger's Bond in A View to a Kill is slightly different to what's come before. Do you want to go through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with Roger in A View to a Kill, the scene in the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower, it's funny that when he says that line, "There's a fly in his soup." He to me just says it at a slightly lower octave, and it sort of sets up the tone of his performance, I think, quite nicely. He's still calm and collected, but there's more strain. There's more strain in the action scenes. That might be age partially too, but also there's that sense that Zorin really does get under Bond's skin. It's interesting in the scene where Zorin shoots Hal, and then says to Bond, "That's rather neat, don't you think?" In the script, Bond's response, brilliant. I'm almost speechless with admiration. In the script, it says Bond plays along, but in the film, how Moore delivers it, it's he's sort of taken aback by Zorin's cruelty. So I mean that to me, that I certainly remember watching the film and being taken by that. Sort of go, oh look, he's this is actually getting under Moore's skin, or more as Bond's skin.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I guess with somebody like Roger who played so many things for laughs, when he did play it straight, it's much more noticeable, isn't it? For that, I mean, obviously the famous one, I guess, for Roger is kicking Locke in the car off the top in For Your Eyes Only off the cliff, and Roger even now says he kind of was not sure about that scene. He feels it was a bit harsh, and all that kind of stuff. But it's funny you say that, because I picked up on that a little bit in the horse chase scene just after Tibbet's been killed. And he rides along and jumps on the side of the car and sees that Tibbet's dead and all that kind of stuff. And Bond's scene with Zorin there is very deadpan and very there's a little bit of seething anger just underneath the surface there, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, isn't there? Yeah, look, I think it works really well, and I think that's very true. Yeah, where there's with Moore, where there's such a level of humour when he suddenly pulls back and that anger comes through. Sorry, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I think the reason that works so well is that earlier I think it's built up to that within the film, because earlier in the film, I love the scene where we see Bond and Zorin at the chateau, and they're chatting away. But each of them know that the other is a danger to them. Like Roger obviously knows that Zorin is the guy that he's there to investigate, and he could be behind it all. Zorin knows that, hang on a minute, who is this guy? He's not good. He could be damaging. Obviously, he does a little thing about the fly casting, and there is the lightheartedness with the underlying threat. And I think because you have that early in the film, Bond at that point is almost playing a game with Zorin. But if you cut from that to the scene like we just mentioned with the Rolls Royce, that game is completely disappeared. It's like, right, there's no time for that now. He's gone through so much, and he knows how deadly Zorin is, that once it gets to that point, obviously with Tibbet being dead and everything, there's no time for humour. It's just right, deadpan and serious. And I think having those two differences works really well.
Yeah, doesn't it? When those faces, in a sense, that they put on fall away, and you sort of get the real agent underneath.
What would you say then, as a lover of View to a Kill? One of the reasons why we've done this extra episode, because we've obviously done the 2 episodes reviewing the film, and then we thought, well, View to a Kill does get such a harder deal amongst a lot of fans. We should do an episode with a couple of the real supporters of A View to a Kill. So there's obviously yourself, and we've got Mark O'Connell, who wrote Catching Bullets on as well on this show. Both big fans of A View to a Kill. So if you were talking to someone who was perhaps a View to a Kill hater, or maybe someone who's not so much of as strong as a hater, but somebody who'd maybe disregarded it in years past, what would you say to that person to say, hey, give it a chance and have a watch? Sell it to us.
I think what I would do is just run for the hills. Look, I'd certainly say one of the things that I really like about A View to a Kill is that it is the Roger Moore template. It's the slightly more tongue-in-cheek template, but it has this undertone, I think, that works really effectively. And it might be, in a way, Tom, what you're saying earlier about, Moore being this lighthearted figure, but then, when the dramatics kick in, it's somehow more noticeable. And so I would say, that A View to a Kill follows the Moore template, but I think more than, if you'll pardon the pun, but I think more than all the other Roger Moore films, it has that undertone of want to say evil, because that's slightly overly dramatic, but it just I think to me has a bit more of an edge, and I think that's primarily on account of Grace Jones and Christopher Walken and the tenor of their performances.
I think something else which we definitely have to mention with A View to Kill is a number of iconic scenes. We sort of mentioned it a bit when we reviewed the film, but if you think about the Eiffel Tower jump, the fight on the Golden Gate Bridge, breathing air out of the tyre, Mayday enjoying itself. There's just so many things where I think A View to Kill is quite underrated in terms of it being noted of the iconic scenes within the film, and I think that that often gets overlooked, which is a shame.
Yeah. Look, it is. I mean, hopefully your review of A View to a Kill might correct some of that. But I know when I was listening to part 2 and you were both talking about the scene, where the airship is going over San Francisco Bay and Bond is holding on. I think that is absolutely iconic. It's quite breathtaking, and Barry's choice of music to play the View to a Kill theme again by sailing over is so inspired. I mean, he could have quite easily gone for a more standard action cue, but instead he plays the romantic theme in a slightly more dramatic level. And yeah, I think Mayday's last moments are absolutely iconic. I think the base jump, and also the expression on Moore's face as she's sailing away, because of course only 8 years ago we'd seen Moore sailing away, and with the parachute coming out, and there was a nice switch there. Yeah, look, I agree. There's a lot of there's a lot of iconic moments, I think, or should I say, would be iconic moments. Yeah.
Cool. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a lot of the writers we've spoken to before, they always say writing a book is kind of like giving birth, and then once you've finished your book, it's kind of like you're kind of mentally spent, and you have to really gather your wits about you and build up some energy to write any more. So are there going to be any more Bond books from you in the future exploring any of the other films, or are you done now? Is that enough that you've got A View to a Kill off your chest?
Well, I'm probably done in a sense, and I don't mean that to sell myself short in a sense, but I do write short essays at a site called a View on Bond, and that's allowed me to just talk about some other aspects of Bond that I either feel strongly about or feel passionately about. So look, if I do any more writing, I think it will be more essays rather than writing about a single film. But it's just funny. A View to a Kill is just a film I've given an awful lot of thought to, and again, just think it's a really interesting installment in the Bond series.
Cool. Sounds good. Definitely. So where can people find you online then? Where can they buy the book? What's the web addresses and all that kind of stuff? Twitters and all that kind of business.
Well, the close look at A View to a Kill can be purchased through at Amazon. Yes, that's it. Amazon, and also sort of the usual suspects. The book depository. I think any sort of online bookstores. It's available on. If people want to read more, the View on Bond or A View on Bond is just that. .com. So, okay. and I also write, sort of just more generally about cinema at a place called at a site called Slivers of Cinema, not slithers, but slivers, like the like the Sharon Stone film. So,
very nice.
Yes.
Nice. Cool. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Andrew. I hope you've enjoyed it. And no problem at all. And anyone who's listening who hasn't had a look, be sure to check it out. A Close Look at A View to a Kill by Andrew McNess. I'm sure we'll get lots of people interested in that.
Cool stuff.
Okay.
Well, hope to see you again soon, Andrew. And thanks for coming on the show.
Okay. You're welcome. Thanks.
Cheers, Andrew. Bye.
Okay, so there we were. Interview with Andrew there, which is great. How cool was that? San Francisco, Golden Gate Bridge, and all of that sort of stuff. You could tell, especially if that's your one. It's like, I guess, for you and I, it'd be Peace Gloria.
Yeah.
You know, Majesty's our favourite. Going there is top of the list. It has to be. Amazing location. Equally, I think if A View to a Kill was our favourite, that Golden Gate Bridge would be right up there, wouldn't it?
Especially, it's like we talked about, is that shot of Roger it's not Roger, shot of Bond, I should say, hanging off the bottom of the Zorin blimp with that shot of the Golden Gate in the background, and how amazing that shot is, especially with the music, like you mentioned. Like, that to me is like the equivalent of, you know, the aerial shots of Peace Gloria as Hilly arrives by helicopter. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's that same sort of thing, I guess. So yeah, man, I think I've never been to San Francisco, so I need to, and after I've got a new level of appreciation for A View to a Kill, I'm going to have to make a trip over there at some point and check that out and run around on the roof of City Hall and all that kind of stuff and see if I can, start some fires and then put them out like a hero. Yeah.
Yeah, and then try and flood Silicon Valley and see what happens.
Yeah, indeed. Good stuff. But so cool. Thank you to our two guests of the day, Mark O'Connell and Andrew McNess. Always good to hear people passionate about Bond, especially when it's, you know, one of the more unsung movies that tends to get a lot of stick. It's good to hear that sort of good, positive angle on it, because it's always good. So there we go. Excellent. So moving on then, Chris, I think it's time to answer our listener trivia question of the day. So would you like to remind us who our trivia question of the day came from?
It is. So in case you don't remember, this is from Thomas Heasley, and the question was,
in which movie does Roger Moore mention James Bond, but it's not a James Bond movie?
So then, Chris, see, my initial thought was, like, again, since we spoke to Roger, I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm going to go through his back catalogue. That sounds like a double entendre, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to get stuck into his back catalogue. Oh, lovely. Yes. I've lost my train of thought now. Yes, I'm gonna look at some of his other movies that I perhaps haven't seen in a long time or at all. And so it's been a while since I've watched any of his non-Bond stuff. And I originally thought maybe it would be Cannonball Run, the Cannonball Run movie that he did. But from what you said, I don't think it is. So why don't you tell us what you think it is, Chris? Because you're probably right. Yeah.
So I think in the Cannonball Run, legally, I don't know if he was allowed to use the names. He was someone pretending to be Roger Moore, wasn't he? I can't remember that. So maybe James Bond was mentioned in that. I can't remember. But the film that I remember seeing earlier in the year was the one which Roger gets a lot of praise for, and rightly so. It's The Man Who Haunted Himself.
Oh, okay.
Now, I know you haven't seen that one yet, have you, Tom? I've got it on DVD, so I'll have to lend it to you, or you know, whatever, download it, or whatever. But it's a really good film, and it's Roger playing two different characters, and basically one character tries to take over the life of the other. It's really interesting. Oh. And I remember there being something about James Bond mentioned in that. I think it's so. Anyway, that's what I think it is. Right. Anyway, I can't think of any other.
All right then. So let's hear from Mr. Heasley again and find out what the answer is.
Hi guys, it's Tom Zeason here in Belfast. Coming back to you then with the answer to the quiz question. And the answer is a 1970 movie called The Man Who Haunted Himself, where Roger says espionage isn't all James Bond and on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So I thought very interesting the fact that 3 years before he played Bond himself, he actually mentioned the character. I don't know if any other Bond actors have done that, but I thought it was a very interesting point. But a very dark movie. So check it out, guys. Keep up the good work, and I'll reply back with more questions soon. Bye-bye.
So there you go, Chris. You pinned the tail on the donkey once again. The Man Who Haunted Himself it was. I'm going to have to get that on my watch list. Absolutely. It's about time I got stuck into that movie, I reckon.
It's a good one, definitely.
Yeah.
So what time is it for now, Tom?
What time is it for now, Chris? I'm going to tell you. You ready for the answer? I'm not sure you're ready for it, Chris.
Okay, go for it.
It's time for the Guess the Quote round.
Bond, James Bond.
Excellent. For anybody who doesn't know, this is where one of us does a quote from a Bond film and the other one has to guess what it is. It was my turn last week, wasn't it?
It was, and it was. I can remember it's quite a funny one.
Yes,
it's a good one.
It was a good one, and I know you won't get it in a million years. Neither will Mark O'Connell or Andrew McNess. No. Not that that's a clue at all. Anyway, I'm gonna perform it. I've got to psych myself up. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Stretch. Any ideas? I'm going to do it for you one more time.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Stretch. That was two very different performances. I don't know what I was doing there. They were. Let me get it right. Stretch. No, I can't do it. I've lost my mojo. Well, go on, have a guess.
I think the first one was the closest, but I think it might possibly be James Bond.
Yes.
In A View to a Kill to the lovely Stacey Sutton.
Absolutely.
When the lift is about to snap when the fire's all round.
You've got it. And Stretch, she did, didn't she, Chris?
She did.
Absolutely. She certainly is. Good stuff. So have we got a quote from you this week, Chris?
We have indeed. Now, my quote I think you're gonna love, Tom. You're gonna go, man, this is amazing. Right. This is great. So are you ready for it?
Yes, I am.
My quote for this week is no thanks. I don't like cockfights.
No.
Okay, I'll say it again. Excuse me. No thanks. I don't like cockfights.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Good. Nice one. I'm because that doesn't. I don't know whether I'm just missing out on something glaringly obvious or whether it's a film I haven't watched since 2002. I'm guessing it might be that, which is why I'm not so familiar with this particular quote. But there we go.
Wait and see.
All right, good stuff. So we'll obviously find out the answer to that next time. Now, usually we have a listener quote, don't we? And we have another one again, which is from last week. I don't even know what that sentence was, mate. I don't even know where my brain went. I'm going to start it all over again. I'm not even going to edit it out. I'm just going to leave it in there. So last week we had a listener quote from Mr. Ralph Lewandowski. Should we find out what that was again?
Yes, let's
do it.
Ring, 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 ring. Der Engländer ist verschwunden. Meow.
Okay. Chris, have you got any leads on that one? Because my assumption was, because of the pussycat, that it would be some sort of Blofeld related thing. It's obviously a German quote there from a native speaker, Ralph there. I'm not 100% on this one. How are you feeling?
Well, I think you're definitely on the right lines. I think it's definitely a Blofeld scene. The German, the closest. Now, if you were thinking of a Blofeld, that could possibly. Okay, with your gut, what sort of Blofeld film is it hinted at more than any other? If you had to go with your first instinct,
Diamonds Are Forever. Not really. My gut instinct would be On Her Majesty's, because
now exactly
yes, that's what I would be thinking.
Okay, any particular sort of? Well, I guess with the scene, we've got the ring, we've got the phone, haven't we?
Yes.
Now, I think it's a point where basically Blofeld's at his desk or whatever. The phone rings. He picks it up, and some dude is telling him that Bond's escaped or something like that. And so Blofeld's like just pissed off, so he chucks his cat.
Yes.
and then basically, I think it's something like that. Anyway.
All right. Okay.
Does that ring any bells?
I feel that I'm barking up the same tree that you are. So shall we hear from Ralph again and see if we're right?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
It's going to be Christoph Waltz now, isn't it? Probably.
This is Ralph calling in with the answer to my listener quote. I reenacted the scene from On Her Majesty's Secret Service where Bond escaped and Blofeld gets the phone call with one of his goons telling him that the Englishman has disappeared. So Blofeld throws his cat on the table and it meows. It was a lot of fun to do. I hope you enjoyed it as well. And keep up the good work. See you. Bye.
Well, there we go. We pinned the tail on the donkey, Chris. We got it. It was obviously
nice.
Exactly what we said. Bond escapes, and then one of his goons, as Ralph put it, gives Blofeld a call, and the poor little pussycat gets chucked off the chair. So there it is. Good stuff.
Nice.
Excellent work,
Good
Ralph.
performance, Ralph.
Excellent performance indeed. Good stuff. So next up then we have a new listener quote, this time from a former JBR second birthday anniversary guest, Mr. Jeff Pollock. So shall we see what his quote of the week is?
Yeah, let's do it.
Tom, Chris, this is Jeff Pollock, your brother from Langley, by way of Florida. Just got to say, that Peter Lamont interview was outstanding. Gracious and humble as they come. Tremendous get. I have a listener quote that I think is going to stump you guys. Here we go. Maduna. Yes, I also am a cunning linguist. So give that one a try. Keep up the great work. Love the podcast. Adios. Or should I say, ciao, Bello?
Oh, that's. Oh, what is that?
Well, Chris, you're obviously on the scent there, mate. For me, I'm think it's obviously. I feel that's going to be somebody who's like maybe Italian or from the Mediterranean area, somewhere like that.
It's Italian. It's definitely.
Yes, excellent quote, Jeff, and I'm glad you enjoyed the Peter Lamont interview. Thank you for your kind words about that. That was a cracking interview. So good stuff. Thank you very much for that quote. And we'll obviously find out what the answer to that is next time. Thank you for getting involved, Jeff. Good stuff. So again, we need to put the call out, don't we? We need some more quotes from people. We need some more trivia questions.
Yep.
So get involved. Go over to the website, jamesbondradio.com, click the speak pipe link. It just says send us a voicemail on the right-hand side of the website. Send us a quote. Send us a trivia question, both if you want to, especially if you never have before. We want some fresh meat on the go. I'm looking at you, Simon Hunter, once again. Good stuff. Excellent. So,
and with answers directly afterwards as well.
Yes, that's most important.
So leave your quote, and then the second one, your answer. Leave your trivia, and then your answer straight after.
Yes,
in a different voicemail.
That's right. So for everything you do, always leave two messages: one with the question or the quote, and then another call with the answer. That would be lovely. Good stuff. Excellent. So you know what it's time for now, don't you, Chris?
No, you tell me, Tom.
It's
what
time for.
Who wrote the score for Live and Let Die? Who played Helga Brandt and how did she die? Who wants to stockpile the water in Bolivia? It's Tommy Trivia.
Oh yes, it's time for Tommy Trivia. For any uninitiated peoples, that is where Chris breaks out the 007 Trivial Pursuit, I nearly said Top Trumps, Trivial Pursuit deck and quizzes me on it. Sometimes I get them all right in a landslide of victory. Sometimes I fail miserably. Sometimes the old one catches me out. And sometimes I actually end up, or we, I should say, end up correcting the Trivial Pursuit deck itself in a display of mutiny for their incorrectness. So let's see what you've got for me this week, Chris. What have we got?
We're going to start today, I reckon, with vehicles.
Lovely.
Okay?
All right.
Starting with vehicles, what mode of transport does Bond and Leiter use to get to the church?
That would be a helicopter.
And after that?
That would be a parachute.
Yes.
Very nice.
Nice one. They use parachutes. So it says parachutes on the back, but they did use the helicopter first. But yeah,
I would say what was misleading about that is I'm not sure I'd call a parachute a mode of transport.
Neither would I. Neither did I.
Right.
So yeah, but I'm definitely going to give you that. Okay, gadgets and weapons. What is the first weapon Professor Dent receives from Dr. No to use to assassinate Bond?
That would be a nasty poisonous spider.
And can you tell me what type of spider?
That's probably a tarantula, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah,
good man. Excellent stuff. Okay, on to locations. Elektra obtains a Russian nuclear submarine to destroy which city?
Istanbul.
Yes, flying for him. Excellent
Lovely
stuff. Okay, crew and behind the scenes. Who directed Moonraker?
Who directed Moonraker? That would be Lewis Gilbert.
Yes.
Very good.
Excellent. Okay, casting characters. What are the names of Blofeld's henchman duo?
Could you just repeat that question for me one more time?
Yeah. What are the names of Blofeld's henchmen duo?
Blofeld's henchman duo.
Yeah, so there are two of them, and they work together and they work for Blofeld, and they're his henchmen.
Thank you for laying that out for me on layman's terms. I thoroughly appreciated that. Good stuff. Oh, yes. Okay. I'm thinking of the wrong Blofeld, aren't I? That would be Mr. Winton, Mr. Kidd.
It would, indeed.
Two highlights of the entire series, as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, final question. This is for a complete 100% sweep of the board on the films. Who does Bond kill in the hotel stairwell in Casino Royale?
Uh-oh. Do you know what? I don't know that dude's name. Shit. He's the dude that basically Le Chiffre stole his money. I know who he is. And he's the one that goes, "Oh, my beauty," to Le Chiffre's missus and goes to chop her arm off. But I've realised I've got no idea what his fucking name is. Shit.
If I give you a first letter, that might help.
All right, go on in.
First letter of his name is a one-word name. First letter, O.
Oscar.
Oh.
No, it's scary. Is it going to be one of those where I know it as soon as you say it?
Maybe. It's Urbano.
Oh, do you know what? Didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I've learned something today.
There you go.
All right,
Urbano. Cool. Okay. Well, that's still 5 out of 6. Superb. 80%
All right.
there.
Good
Brilliant stuff. See, there's the odd one that sneaks in there, isn't there?
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
the odd sneaky one.
Indeed.
Cool.
Good stuff. See, that's you often find with those things, don't you? Like 007 Trivial Pursuit, you kind of know the questions aren't going to be that challenging because it's going to be for like a mass market thing for the family to play at Christmas or whatever. So for people like you and I who are just stupid geeks, then we would usually come in with a level of confidence. You're like, I'm just going to coast through this. But then one comes along like that does catch you out. And I would say only really the most hardcore fans would know that name immediately, wouldn't they? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's an unusual one. Yeah.
For a mass market one, you wouldn't. Not many people get that idea.
No, absolutely not. All right then. So next up, Chris, do you know what it's time for now?
It might be time for...
It's the music
That's right. It's time for Guess the Music Cue. Now, I've only just noticed, Chris, you're rocking the original JBR T-shirt. You're looking very fetching in it. It's not available any longer. It's a collector's item.
It's
so
not, is it?
There
It
you
is
go.
a collector's item.
Yeah, absolutely. Worth.
I personally signed this one myself myself.
Oh, you're switched on, mate. You really are switched on with the whole value of things. That's great. I'm purposely not going to sign it because then it'll be even more valuable. Yes. There we go. Righty-ho then. So it's Guess the Music Cue. Yeah. So you had a rather lovely cue for us last time. Should we have a listen to that again?
I did. Let's do it. And I know you got it straight away, but let's do it. Let's go for it.
Mate, like I said last time, you really tapped into my soul with that cue. It was as soon as I heard it, I was taken immediately to that scene and some of the rather lovely visuals as well. I thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. So I'm confident. I'm really confident with this one.
And what can you expand on that then? What do you think it is?
It's the scene from somewhere I recently tried to visit, but it's no longer there.
Ooh.
The Bottoms Up Club.
It is superb, excellent stuff, Tom. Now, when you've heard that first little bit of music, did you immediately see an arse rising in front of you?
Of course I did.
Of
course I did, and I immediately reached for my ginger ale as well. So I was really getting in the mode for it. Yeah, lovely, good stuff.
Excellent,
wicked.
Cool. Well, I've got another music cue for you.
Lovely.
For this week. Now, this one I know you're going to get straight away, but it's one that I haven't done, so I thought I'll just do it anyway. It's quite a cool little one. I think you'll enjoy it.
All right, let's have a listen. Do you know what? I'm not actually 100% what that is. Actually, I've got a couple of suspicions. That's a funny little cue that is. That's generally made me laugh. Yeah. Very
cool.
nice.
I'm glad you like it. So we'll find out. We'll come back to that next time.
All right.
And see if you can get that right. Anyone that's got a guess, let us know. Facebook and website and everything.
Good stuff.
So there we go. So what we've got up next up?
Next up, Chris, it is our penultimate game of the day. It is, what's the next line? Very good. This is a little bit like Guess the Quote Round for any uninitiates, but we have to perform the very next line afterwards. It's not just what it is. You've got to get the scene and then provide the following line. So I believe it's your turn this week, isn't it, Chris?
It is. Now, I've got one here which is incredibly easy. You're going to know it,
okay, but
I want the full reply. So I don't just want the short reply. I want the full reply.
All right.
Which I know that you're going to know. Okay.
All right.
Are you ready, Tom?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You're not even going to need a second go. You're going to do it off the cuff. Yeah?
Okay. All right. Okay. Here we go. Oh, no, the pressure's on.
You will.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what's the next line for this podcast is, "With nothing to declare
except jello, 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 jello."
Yeah. Lovely.
We did it.
Lovely,
we did it
Tom.
together, man. We joined forces and made something beautiful, and it happened. I like it. Good stuff.
I love it. Excellent.
Yeah.
Good work, Tommy. Good work.
Good stuff.
Cool.
All right, then. So it's time to finish up the proceedings for today with a round of Bond Girl Battle.
Oh, James.
No, I'm just looking.
Oh,
there it is.
There we are. So we're on to round 13, I believe, or something along those lines. It's hard to keep count because there's so many. I have here my lovely sombrero, and inside are the remaining Bond girls that we've yet to play. So I'm going to pick out 3. Tom's going to tell me to stop. I'll pick out 3, and then we can go and see who goes through.
All right.
Okay, Tom, whenever you're ready.
Okay, stop.
Okay.
Stop. Stop.
Okay, so let's just see who we have. So our first one is the beautiful, the delectable Naomi.
Oh, goodness gracious me. I've gone weak at the knees,
now,
Chris.
You know what, Tom? If we went with our original plan of doing Bond Girl Battle,
yeah,
Naomi would be incredibly hard to beat.
I know.
Incredibly hard.
Yes,
but
good Lord.
She's just absolutely... Carolyn Monroe, obviously lovely, but absolutely stunning. And a good character as well.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have... Come on, Mr. Bond. A 7-year-old can take 3 Gs. We have Dr. Holly Goodhead.
Very
there she
good.
is.
Very nice.
With
a woman.
One of the best names.
Yes.
A woman. One of the best names in the series as well.
Indeed.
I really like that.
Yep.
And finally we have... John Williams would like this.
Oh,
finally,
I know who's coming.
There she is.
Yes.
Aki.
There she is.
I know. If John Williams was part of this, he'd go right straight away. Aki, that's it. Boom,
and I imagine,
done,
if Aki didn't come up top trumps, he would probably throw all the cards off the table and have a hissy fit and storm off with the Aki card to do something unmentionable with. Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff.
This is an interesting one then. So we have, just to recap, we have Naomi, Spy Who Loved Me.
Yes.
We have Dr. Holly Goodhead from Moonraker. And we have Aki from You Only Live Twice. So, Naomi, let's start with Naomi. What do we think of Naomi?
Naomi is ravishingly beautiful, Chris. You know what happens in a lot of action films, like for example at the beginning of Octopussy, where say they're trying to sneak past somewhere, they get a beautiful woman to stand in front of the guard, and the guard will be like, oh, and he'll adjust his hat and be like, oh, it's a beautiful lady, and then Bond will sneak past behind her, whatever. Do you know what I mean? I feel like she has that power that nobody would really be able to think all that straight. All she'd have to do is just stand there and look gorgeous, and you would just be all fingers and thumbs, wouldn't you?
Maybe even throw him a little wink.
Yeah, indeed. So she's good at that. Absolutely. Let's get that out of the way. Now, she can fly a helicopter. So she's good at that.
Incredibly well. Whilst firing machine guns mounted on the helicopter. Yeah. So imagine that takes a lot of training and skill, to be able to do that. And of course, she's sort of a Stromberg's right-hand woman, isn't she? So it's got, she's deadly at the end of the day, Chris. Yeah. She's stunningly beautiful and she's deadly. So she's a force to be reckoned with as far as I'm concerned. And I think she's quite brave as well. She'll fly on a speedboat doing 70 miles an hour in just a bikini and yet, not feel the cold, which is pretty decent. She's good. I think she's kind of, obviously Jaws is the main sort of killing machine for Stromberg, but Naomi is that sort of flip side of that. she is equally effective, I think, but in a completely different mold.
Do you know what it's like? It's like Beauty and the Beast, isn't it? Obviously, Jaws is this big beastly monster of a man who's just got incredible strength and all the rest of it. And then, you would send them both out to do tasks in very different ways. If you needed the typical temptress, voluptuous seductress, you would obviously send Jaws. I mean, obviously you would obviously send Naomi out. And then if you needed some heads bashing together, you would send out Jaws, wouldn't you? So she's obviously, she's got some skills. She's got skills to pay the bills. That one,
has.
yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so on to number 2, Holly Goodhead. What do we think of Holly?
Well, Holly Goodhead is another excellent contender because she's obviously a CIA agent. And she's good, man. I tell you, I remember when we reviewed Moonraker, one of the things I really like about Goodhead is how she beds Bond, obviously, as you would. And then Bond does his usual thing of like sneaking out, right? I'm going to be extra quiet. And he goes out the door. The second that door clicks, her eyes are open and she's on the go. Yeah. It's not like she's just some floozy that he's just, slung the beans up and he's out the door, right? It's like she's in on that. She's got the beans. She's been grateful for the beans, but now she's going to get up and out the door as well. So it's an equal-sided thing. So she's very good, and it's the way they move forward through the story. They're always sort of neck and neck along the way, aren't they? Like when Bond's on the old telescope thing in Brazil, and then he moves over, and there she is doing exactly the same thing. So she's very talented. She's very good. She's a doctor, so she's got a good old brain on her. And she can fly a space shuttle, can't she? So she's multi-talented.
Fully trained astronaut, as we know. And she can fight as well. She learned to sort of fight in Vassar as well. When they're on the space station, she has to take out those guys. So she can handle herself. She's obviously extremely clever. And she does match Bond a lot of the time. Sometimes outdoing him. And like we said, she's an agent as well. Works for the CIA. So lots of good stuff for Goodhead there.
Absolutely. Definitely. Good stuff.
Okay.
And then finally we have Aki. Now,
here we are.
I'm apologies to John Williams. I know he's going to be gutted, but I'm going to just come out and say that she's probably going to be our first casualty of the day, simply because it's not our own fault, right? She's great. And as John says, all she's wearing is like a ratty old t-shirt or whatever around the Kobe docks, and she looks stunning. Yeah. So there is that. But we don't really get to see her doing all that much action, do we? Do you know what I mean? It's not like we see... A little bit. Go on, talk to me.
Yeah.
Then. Give me.
I think that's a bit quick. Let's look at her points first, right. and then we can decide, because she's very clever. She's the one that meets Bond. I love you and all that sort of thing.
That's true.
She's the one that lures Bond down those stairs into the trap that then.
So she's a bit of a temptress herself. Yes.
All yes, right. She's temptress and she's clever. She's the one that she sort of initiated that. She's good with the car. She saved Bond's life at least 2 or 3 times with the car, when he was about to be machine gunned and stuff like that. She can obviously drive really well. She's skilled at outmaneuvering the other cars.
You've just put me to shame, Chris. You've just put me to shame. Yeah. Absolutely. I apologise. I take it back. Right, let's clean slate it. Go on. Keep going. It's good.
Yeah. And she's obviously, now if we go into sordid territory, she's good at a massage. She's obviously good with that. I know it's not really a character point, but her death is very, I think that's a brilliant death.
Oh, mate, that is one of the most striking deaths of the series. And it's as well, like the panic of it as well on her little face once she ingests the poison. I just want to hold her close,
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And like we said with the Kobe docks, okay, she's not fighting there, but she can still clamber down that rope, and she's she is one of Tanaka's best agents and stuff. Yeah. So I think we were maybe a bit quick to get rid of her straight away. So she definitely has a plus points. I think if she had gone throughout the whole film, and been like the main Bond girl throughout, that would have been that little bit extra. Obviously, she did die, and then sort of Kissy came to the fore. So I think in terms of time, that might be, she's.
I feel if I was to change one thing about You Only Live Twice, well, I don't know. I feel like she should have gone all the way, but then we would have lost that death scene, and that is such an amazing death scene. It is a shame, because Kissy comes in. She sort of just does the same job that Aki does. Do you know what I mean? So. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so come on then. What's your feelings? I spoke out of turn, Chris, so I'm going to let you take the reins on this one.
Well, for me, it's tricky, isn't it? I think it's closer than perhaps we initially said. I think Naomi, if we were going on the, who sort of gets our blood boiling the most. She would win it hands out.
Yes.
I mean, she is stunning. But in terms of screen time, similar to Aki, she's only in there for she's in there for a certain limited time. Great, again, to be honest, great death as well with the whole the helicopter and the missiles and stuff. So she is brilliant and she's clever. Aki is brilliant and she's clever. But in terms of screen time, in terms of intelligence, being able to handle herself and everything else, for me, in terms of a character, I think Goodhead is slightly above the other two. I put all three as good contenders against anyone else. But in terms of what Holly Goodhead brings to the table, I think there's just a lot there.
Well, there is a lot. I suppose there's always a natural advantage to a main Bond girl in any film, isn't there? Because you get to see the most of her, and generally speaking, she gets stuck in more than the supporting roles would be. So there is that. But of course, she's a spy. She stays neck and neck with Bond throughout the whole thing. She's the one flying the shuttle at the end. So it's like, it's and like I say, she's anything but a damsel. And I feel she's just as in control. There's always the danger of saying, Bond's just bedded and discarded this lady or whatever. But no. It takes two to tango, and she was equally up for it, and she was equally up and out the door as well. So I would say she if there's any Bond girl who goes toe to toe with Bond, and they often say, don't they? Oh, she's Bond. I'm Bond's equal, and I'm a different Bond girl. I would say Holly Goodhead lives up to that description.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
but I think likewise the other two. Aki, it was a strong character as well. Like we're saying, outwitted Bond certain times, and was a really good partner for her. Yeah. Naomi, obviously, the dark side. She was a villainess, but brilliant, seductive, looked amazing, but it was also deadly.
Yeah.
So we haven't got a weak link. For me, all three are really strong.
Yeah.
But it's just Goodhead brings that extra little bit to the table, I think.
Absolutely, I think you're right. So
do you agree with that?
I do, and I tell you, I'm biased because I really fancy Naomi in a big way. So I want her to go through the next round, but I know when it comes down to it, Goodhead would probably prevail there.
Yeah.
So cool. All right then.
So there we
go.
Can
you just give Naomi a little kiss for me, just so I feel a little bit better? There we go. All right, cool. Thank you. Good stuff.
We'll say goodbye to Naomi.
There we go.
We'll say goodbye to Aki for John. John can give her a little kiss on the screen.
Lovely. There we go, John. There you go, mate.
And there we are. Dr. Holly Goodhead goes through to the next round.
There she does. Stuff. All right. Good stuff. Brilliant. Excellent. Okie dokie then. So to have a little recap on the previous rounds of Bond Girl Battle, I mean, this particular, there's so many of them. This is going to take us a long time to get through. So currently in the second round of Bond Girl Battle, we've got Solange, we've got Paula Ivanova, we've got Tracy, we've got Melina Havelock, we've got Solitaire, we've got Fiona Volpe, and I can tell you're going to be arguing that one to the cows come home. We've got Anya Masova, we've got Pussy Law, we've got Camille Montez, we've got Domino, we've got Wylin, we've got Natalia Fyodorovna Semyonova, and then of course we've got Dr. Holly Goodhead. So that is going to be a rather wonderful blancmange of lady action, girl on girl combat coming up over the following episodes of James Bond Radio. Yes. What a wonderful thought that is. All right, Chris. Now we've got a lot coming up, haven't we? It's the Christmas time period. It's Christmas time with mistletoe and wine, as good old Cliff Richard likes to sing about, or used to sing about. Obviously, tomorrow will be Christmas Eve, so Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope you get all the presents that you wanted from Father Christmas. Good stuff. Now,
any Bond gifts, let us know as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Let us know what Father Christmas brings you. Bond-wise for gifts on the old social medias and all that kind of stuff. Now, coming up, we've got a rather wonderful round of Christmas programming. So, for example, we've got today's episode. So you've already listened to that, so that's already done. But obviously, what we have is the annual Boxing Day Christmas quiz, which is obviously on Monday this year. For anybody who's not from Britain and doesn't know what Boxing Day is, that's the day after Christmas Day, basically, where everybody in England take to the streets and fight each other in a boxing match to see who comes out on top to find the strongest person in the whole village. So that's this Monday. So the Boxing Day quiz, 100 questions to test your skills there. So there's that to look forward to. And then, of course, next week, Agent Gale has returned from the field with a completed video podcast. So this one is going to be special because we've seen a 5-minute sort of little preview of it, haven't we, Chris? And it's already blown us away. So we haven't even seen the rest of it yet, but it's already blown us away. So that's coming out the following Friday, the 30th. So that'll be, you could call that our New Year's JBR special. So you're probably going to want to watch that one on YouTube rather than listen to it because it's such a visual feast. But there we go. So that's coming up. So Monday, Boxing Day quiz. Following Friday, we have Dan Gale's super duper episode, which we can finally reveal the title. It's and what it's about. The podcast is about the editing of John Glenn. Again, we've got a niche topic. Last time it was the audiobooks of Bond. We've got a niche topic. But this man, Dan Gale, can make anything the most interesting thing you've ever seen or heard in your entire life. And the title of said podcast is a work of genius in itself. The title is You Only Live Splice. So there we go. So look forward to that on the 30th. Make sure you tune in because you're going to bloody love it. Now, in other news, Chris, we guested on somebody else's podcast recently, didn't they, for their James Bond Christmas special. So that was for whom? Tell the story, Chris.
So that was for Movie Heaven and Movie Hell, and we did a lovely interview with those guys. It was Simon and Keith, and that was last week, and I think that's due the end of December, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that comes out on the 30th. I think they said the 30th. So same day as Dan Gale's episode. It might be New Year's Eve. I don't know, but that weekend. Yeah. So check out the Movie Heaven, Movie Hell podcast. Where we were talking for a good 2.5 hours. I think it was in the end.
Good guys, really, really good guys.
Yeah. So it was basically the premise was we had to each had to pick our movie Heaven for Bond and our movie Hell for Bond. So. Top prize if you can guess what our movie Hell was. Yes, so there was a little bit of discussion of that. So make sure you tune into that and have a good old listen. So that'll be good. So plenty for you to be going on with over the Christmas period. I mean, you can push your family to one side. You don't need that. You can just get stuck into some Bond podcastage over the next week or so. So good on you.
And equally, in 2 weeks' time, so when we come back, so we've got the bumper quiz. We've got Dan's, we've got our podcast on Movie Heaven, Movie Hell, and our next one is going to be the 90-second listener review of A View to a Kill, where we get, obviously, all of the listeners' feedback, the listener takeover. So we want to hear if you love A View to a Kill, let us know. If you hate it, let us know. If there's certain things about it which maybe we haven't mentioned, maybe we have mentioned, but you want to put your 2 cents on it, let us know. So go to the jamesbondradio.com website, send a voicemail. You only get 90 seconds. Now, 90 seconds to some people can seem a lifetime. To others, they're halfway through their review and suddenly they're cut off, aren't they? So that is all you get, 90 seconds. But we want as many 90-second reviews as we can.
Absolutely.
So be sure to send them in.
And again, it'll be good if your reviews can stimulate a little bit of conversation. So like we often say, don't just phone up and go, I think A View to a Kill's rubbish, and then leave it at that. Because that's boring. Give us some constructive criticisms if you don't like it, and give us why you do love things and all that kind of stuff. Except that Greek fella that phoned up for Euros Only. You can leave whatever you want because he was amazing. I loved him. All he said was For Euros Only is a great film of James Bond, and then he hung up. Love it. So we'll have more of that, please. Anyway, good stuff. Right, so we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yes,
from James Bond Radio. Until we see you again. I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And James Bond Radio will return on Monday and next Friday and every Friday after that. We'll see you then. Bye.
Have a good New Year and Christmas. Bye.